States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning. Moines County Board of Supervisors, Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. Are there any changes to the tentative agenda? We've got an agenda. Meet with department heads, elected officials. Sarah Doty, Moines County Auditor.
Good morning. Just keeping busy as usual. Nothing to report at this time.
Got all your accounting and bookkeeping done yet?
No.
Or, election,
Everything,
yes.
everything except for voter credit, but we're getting there.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Colin Gerst, IT.
Good morning, just keeping busy like always, but nothing new to report for the board, so.
Thank you, Colin. Kevin Glendenny, Des Moines County Sheriff.
Good morning. We got plenty going on as well. I'll try to hit the highlights. We had Toys for Tots this weekend. That was a success, and then they'll do the distribution this Saturday. This Saturday is also Shop with a Cop, so we'll have that line of squads heading from Blackhawk to Walmart somewhere around noon. So just a parade of cars with local area kids taking them shopping. So. Had the opportunity last week to meet with the director of DOC and then the Oakdale warden, IMCC warden, just to discuss some of the ongoing issues of how long it takes to get competency evaluations and restorations, those that may not be mentally fit to stand trial. The timeline's been kind of long in the years past, but I feel like we've reached a really good resolution on that. The aim is to be under 30 days to make it happen, but there's a lot of parties involved, including defense counsel, to make sure we get those requests in and get a court order so we can make it happen. So we're going to try to be a little bit more involved in that to make sure they're not sitting in jail longer than what they need to be. This morning the jail is at 91. As we took 2 additional females to the residential facility in Ottumwa, we have 5 or 6 going out tomorrow between prison and the residential facility. So seeing continued improvement there, and our out of county was at 18 this morning, and we'll see that come down this week as well. I think that's about all I've got for the board today.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Rodney Bleachner, Maintenance Director.
Good morning. Just got a lot of stuff going on. Nothing new to report at this time.
Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
Trent Hankelbeck, Des Moines County Attorney's Office.
Well, it's been busy. I mean, Kevin and the PD have been, been doing their jobs for sure. We had 19 speed demands in district court this month that they had to work through. So, it's busy down there. Aside from that, nothing significant to report. We all know we have the IPIP board here today and the work session to go after this meeting. But that's everything.
Thank you, Trent.
Good, thank you.
Zach James, Land Use.
Yeah, good morning. Things are going pretty well. I think for the first time since Jared and I took over land use, I don't even know how long ago that was now.
Things are going well for the first time.
Yes, exactly.
You said that in front of both papers,
Yeah. No, first time we haven't had a subdivision waiting to be recorded.
Good attempt to clarify.
I mean, both items are true. So, so that's good. We got a couple others that are in the works that we're expecting to come in, and then we're working through a couple of violations. Trent, we've met with him a couple times about a few of these some zoning violations that, and I guess Kevin too. We've messaged back and forth with him a couple times about some things there with a couple properties. So. Kind of working through some zoning violations and working with Iowa DNR as well. We got some solid waste issues on a couple properties, so working through some of those. Otherwise, yeah, things are going well. Not for the first time since Jerry.
I shouldn't have jumped to conclusion.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Zach. Chris Lee, Des Moines County Conservation Director.
Good morning. I think the big thing that's consuming our life at our office anyway is we're adopting this new software system that's going to allow us to manage events and memberships a little bit better. So we're trying to get our heads wrapped around that. It seems like one training after another
Was it written by Tyler?
No, it was not. I mean, it's got a lot of user-friendly components to it, but anytime you adopt a, big new system, it's kind of a big lift, so, you can expect, or at least our patrons can expect after the first of the year that we're gonna be rolling out a new system for shooting range members, to manage that and, event sign-up, so yeah, that's kind of the big thing we've been dealing with administratively anyway. And then, just working on, I sent a budget amendment to Cheryl this morning, to just clean up some grants and some different funding that we had coming through. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Chris. Janelle Nally Longquist, the Moines County Treasurer.
Good morning. We're busy like everyone else. We've got a lot of fleet renewals coming in right now this time of year. And we've also got some legislative changes that were passed in this last session, some huge ones, that will be effective January 1st. So hopefully the DOT has got the programming in place on our statewide system when this becomes effective. I mean, we're currently, right now as I speak, got some of them training downstairs on some of that right now too. So and actually Des Moines County was involved with some of the implementation of the new programming as I volunteered Shelley. She's been our deputy. She's got 30 years of experience. She knows it back and forth. So I'm hopeful that everything is okay when we start this in January. But then after that, they've announced they're gonna revamp the system again. So after all of these changes have been put in. But yeah, we're busy. So like I said, we're training and getting ready. It's a good thing that's coming in January, so.
I'm sure Shelley will come through for you.
Yes, she will. She already does.
Thank you, Janelle. Krista Pogemiller, Local Health.
Good morning, we're also busy. Anticipate that our permanent signage in front of the new health department will go up today, so we're looking forward to that. We're working with this week with the hospital and emergency management and the surrounding counties, and we're gonna do a closed pod drill. So we always try to do our communication drills with surrounding counties and with emergency management. And a pod is a point of distribution, so should we ever need to distribute anything to our community or our nursing facilities, this is a great way to practice that, and so we will be doing that starting Thursday, clear through next week. So it's just a good opportunity to work with our surrounding counties and in emergency management, so.
Thank you, Krista. Ken Heineman, Mahasi.
Yes.
Mental Health Agency of Southeast Iowa, soon to be retired.
That's right.
12 more days.
Who's counting?
End of next week. Yeah, the HASI meetings are tomorrow, so we'll have our 3 meetings, stakeholder meetings and the governing board meeting with the regular business. Also, December 30th, we should hear from the state about who's gonna be the ASO, the Administrative Services Organization, for the new behavioral health unit or system that'll start July 1. So, and then I've got my personnel action on the agenda for retirement. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Ken.
Ken, you got any long-term goals on retirement?
I don't know what I'm doing. I've been working since 6th grade. I have no idea how this is gonna go, other than I'm taking my IPERS and my Social Security, and I'll see if I get so tired of sitting at home. And we have a daycare in our home, where my wife watches preschoolers. So my house is just filled with children, and I may need to get another job.
Make sure I look at the paper.
That's why you bought that new motorcycle.
Yeah, I'll get on the motorcycle when it gets nice weather and all that. I'll do a little traveling, but I expect I'll probably get bored. So. Maybe Colin can teach me how to use a chainsaw or something. I don't know.
Thank you, Ken.
Yep.
And last but not least, Secondary Roads County Engineer Brian Carter.
I have to say, that's not my vision of retirement, house full of kids. But, no, we're plenty of stuff going on. The guys are gonna start backfilling on the south side along Pleasant Grove Road. I do have a road tour on, if you guys, any of you guys wanna go take a look at that after your IPIP meeting, that's fine. If you don't have time or don't have that interest, that's fine too. But, south side is done, and they're gonna kick over and work on the north side, and they're hoping maybe to get the north side done this week. We'll just see what the weather does and what they keep going, so. So that's coming along, and otherwise, we're out, we're actually gonna shift back into ditching right now. They got a little bit of mild weather after the next couple of days, so try to keep that going as long as we can, as long as the weather allows. So, plenty of other stuff going on, but most of that's boring and behind the scenes and actually keeps things running. Budget time though, that fills up plenty of time, so. That's what I have.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody? Correspondence. Either of you gentlemen have any correspondence? I have none. And I have none. We will proceed to discussion and vote. We have payroll reimbursement claims of $303.46. Move to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker.
Yes. And I see Cheryl Plank back there. We're gonna have an update on happenings at what was formerly Hope Haven.
Yes, so have you seen the press release that we put out on Friday regarding our can barn?
If it came out that soon, I have not seen it that recently.
Here's a copy if you wanna. So we have made the decision to close our can redemption center. And the reason, that has come about is we're expected to lose $200,000 this year.
Can redemption?
In the can redemption center alone. And so I think people don't realize, when I came to Hope Haven, it was one of the first things I asked my predecessor was, why are you still doing a can redemption center? And it was good reasons, right? It employed people with disabilities, it helped the community out, there just were lots of good reasons. But when the Can Redemption Center started, it was under a 401c certificate, sub-minimum wage, so you could pay a piece rate.
Oh.
Right, and so, you could afford to do it, then, and it gave jobs to people. But since that time, our world has really changed. We can employ people all over the place. At one time, we had 60 to 70 people working there. Now we have 17 individuals with disabilities, 25 total, because it's an integrated site. And the lowest anyone's paid is minimum wage. So we're paying people up to $15, $16 an hour. And so there still was hope when the 3 cents went into effect from 1 penny to 3 pennies that we'd see a difference in our loss. We haven't seen a difference in our loss. In fact, we're showing a bigger loss now. There's a number of reasons why fewer people are returning cans. They're just taking them to the recycling center. You're only getting a nickel back, those who turn it in. And so it became just almost, we just couldn't figure out any more efficiencies to continue to do it. As you know, we merged with Imagine the Possibilities just a year ago to help find efficiencies. And to continue to do a can redemption center because it benefits the community just doesn't make good business sense for us. We'd like to continue, but it's not employing a number of people. It doesn't fit our mission anymore. And so I wanted to come here to personally tell you today that we are making that change effective March 31st. It's in the press release. But Hope Haven has changed. We're gonna be 75 years next year. It's changed from when it started. When it started, a woman started providing not daycare, someone mentioned daycare, now it's on my brain. A person started bringing individuals with disabilities in 1950 into her home to teach them. And because otherwise they weren't taught back then. They didn't go to school, there was nothing. That's how Hope Haven started in 1950. And it's just continually changed based on what's needed in the community, based on what the environment requires. And our employment services, getting people employed in the community it's just excelling. And Eva, who runs that program, has done a really good job getting people employed. So it's just, we continue to change. And next year, as I said, will be 75 years. And so I'd like you to save the date for May 15th, because we'll be celebrating that 75 years. I did bring copies of our Save the Date, but I can give you that too. And it's gonna be at Catfish Bend. Some of you are aware of our annual event we usually do every year. This is gonna be a little different than what we've done in the past, because we're celebrating 75 years. So we're hoping to get people to talk about how the services have changed, what they've done over the years. So I don't want people to think with the Can Redemption Center closing, that's to help us survive, that's to help us, continue to be sustainable. It's not to say we're leaving, we're excelling, we're doing great work. So that's what I was here to tell you.
Well, thank you, that's interesting.
It is interesting, and what people, when it comes to the Can Redemption, what people tend to not understand is they're like, well, where's that nickel go if they're not returning to redemption center? And that stays with the distribution centers. The people who make money off of the deposit is the distribution centers. So just, it's a legislative issue, it's not ours. So if you want to talk to your legislators, because the number one question is, well, where are we going to take our cans? And it's in the press release, the closest place is Mount Pleasant and Fort Madison to take your cans. So, okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, we have a Mississippi Valley Workforce Development Board funding request.
Do you want me to read this, or you got it, Tom?
Well, feel free to read.
The Mississippi Valley Workforce Development Board is seeking Des Moines County Supervisors' support to continue the impactful work of our Skill Up Mississippi Valley initiative in the upcoming program year. This innovative online program provides no-cost access to thousands of high-quality courses, enabling residents across our 8 counties to gain valuable skills and industry-recognized credentials with no eligibility requirements. Skill Up Mississippi Valley offers over 7,000 courses, including more than 1,000 available in Spanish and Chinese, and the opportunity to prepare for over 130 industry-recognized credentials. Job seekers and employees can enhance their skills, while employers benefit from a more skilled workforce at no additional cost. This initiative is a vital resource for our community, especially for the most vulnerable, those facing barriers to employment or limited economic opportunities. By equipping residents with marketable skills, we're helping to reduce unemployment rates, boost household incomes, and strengthen the local economy. The benefits extend to our employees as well, with access to a more qualified workforce that reduces recruitment and training costs and enhances productivity. Local industries are better positioned to remain competitive, ensuring economic growth and stability for Des Moines County. Since its launch in June 1st, 2024, 75 residents from Des Moines County have already accessed Skill Up Mississippi Valley to improve their job readiness and expand their career prospects. As we look to expand the program's impact for another year, we're asking each county to contribute a share based on local usage to date through November 30th. And for Des Moines County, this amount is $4,273.50. We would be grateful for the opportunity to discuss this further and answer any questions. So they're asking for $4,273 to continue with this Mississippi Valley Skill Up that started June 1st of 2024.
My response to out of the blue bill for $4,273.50 is I have questions. There's a lot of job things, and then there's 2 sheets here of uncompelling statistics or graphs that and apparently we've been accruing this amount since June 1st. It would take a little more information to get my support. It shows how many cars have started, how many completed. If it's you've got 496 started, 101 completed. I assume this is area-wide. These these graphs don't mean anything.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, that's my thoughts. If somebody wants to come and answer more questions or provide a little more information, I'd be willing to talk about it, but other than that, it's completely up to you, gentlemen.
I'll be glad to have Miranda come down on another meeting and to share further on what they're doing. I personally just don't like it when they don't give me some information up front and say, hey, you know, are you guys interested in it? They just tell me on the back end and say, this is gonna be your cost. And again, this is just me, but I've got a hard time with, I don't know, I don't want to use the right words, but, you know, either you want a job or you don't, you know? I mean, doing this and, you know, flipping over tables and giving them candy bars if they show up. I mean, do you want to work? You know, we've got over 1,200 jobs in Des Moines County. Come get one. You know, that's the way I felt when I first got on this board, and I kind of still feel the same way. I hate that. So, but she's more than welcome. I'll definitely let her know, but.
They have candy bars?
They do all kinds of things to incentivize people to get a job. And I thought just get a job and after you get a paycheck. I thought that was all the incentive that was needed, so I mean that. I just think that's, I don't know, I don't like that.
Be a good candy bar.
I'm easily distracted.
I was on that board for 8 years, and it started out, and then they regrouped us, you know, up with these other counties up the river. And this workforce development board is going down. We don't have anything around Des Moines County. They're not doing anything for us. Right now, I can't support it.
It sounds like if somebody wants to come talk to us and bring us some information, we'll listen. But, that's it. Okay. We have resolution 24-50 Iowa Public Information Board, IPIB acknowledgement. Whereas the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors acknowledges the closed session on September 24th, 2024 did not comply with the requirements for a closed session under Iowa Code Chapter 21. Now therefore be it resolved that the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors shall attend the Public Information Board training on December 10th, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Tom Broker.
Yes. Okay, we have resolution 2024-51, establishing the Emergency Medical Services District. You might recall, we passed the establishment of the EMS district by motion last week. But as we had noticed previously when we were discussing publishing, it had to be published twice in a certain, we only have one paper that we could get to do that. Anyway, we trying to balance and make sure we get it done. Anyway, it says that after and within 10 days of the hearing, the board shall establish the district by resolution or disallow the petition. The Iowa Supreme Court has recognized motions as having the effect of resolutions, but just to be on the safe side, we've prepared a resolution establishing the district. A resolution establishing Emergency Medical Services District. Whereas petition meeting the requirements of Iowa Code 357F was received on November 19th, 2024, and whereas a public hearing meeting the requirements of Iowa Code 357F was held on December 3rd, 2024. Now therefore be it resolved by the members of the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors that the Northern Des Moines County EMS District shall be established as proposed. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker.
Yes. Iowa code further requires the board to appoint a competent, disinterested civil engineer to prepare a preliminary plat as required by Iowa Code Section 357F and determine his compensation. Mr. Mahaffey has graciously taken care of that. Anyway, so he has requested the board appoint Mr. Steve Hartman, who, through his company, Temp Assist, at a cost not to exceed $7,000. So I would appreciate a motion to appoint Mr. Steve Hartman.
So moved.
Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Tom Broker.
Yes. Okay, we have personnel actions. We have one for mental health. The aforementioned Mr. Hyman's retirement
Quitter.
request. Mr. Hyman is retiring from the community services or ex-community services department, effective 12/2. I thought you had 2 more
20,
weeks.
the 20th.
12/20.
Yeah.
Okay. 12/20. What do you think? Should we let him retire?
I don't know if we should let him. I may need more time to think.
I'm not
about it.
feeling a lot of support up here.
I think before we let you retire, you need to take a diaper changing course.
I think I will need some of
Does
that.
any of you women volunteer for that for him?
And some good earplugs.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Ken, it's been nice working with you all these years.
It's been my pleasure to work for the county, and you know, I kind of missed working for the county instead of the region. I enjoyed being a director in the county level more than I did when they took away local control and made it all regionalized, but that's just me.
You just missed my calls to your house.
I have enjoyed the job overall, just helping people with disabilities in lots of different ways, and been working in this field for 33 years, and in the not-for-profit world, and then in the hospital group, and then this job for 17 and a half years here, and so it's been my privilege, and I think I've gained more than I've given, so I appreciate that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Tom Broker.
Yes. You have a great retirement, Ken.
Thank you.
And we have 9 personnel actions from the correctional center. You guys might want to count these so they don't stick together. We've got Bryce Allen Wade, a correctional officer, new hire. And the new rate is $48,614.34. We have James Pleasant, a promotion to sergeant. Previous rate was $54,336.04. The new rate is $64,517.27. Brad Koenig, correctional officer, a promotion to sergeant. His previous rate was $56,101.97. His new rate is $64,500. All of these are effective January 1st, except the first one. I apologize, correctional officer Brian Price Wade. His is effective December 19th. Joseph Dolph, a sergeant, promoted to lieutenant. His previous rate was $64,517.27. His new rate is $70,127.46, effective January 1st. Nicholas Jeffries, a sergeant, promoted to lieutenant. Previous rate was $64,517.27. The new rate is $70,127.46, effective January 1st, 2025. Addison Clayton, a part-time cook's assistant, promoted to part-time cook. Previous rate was $9.97 an hour, new rate is $16 an hour, effective November 13th, 2024. Rita Forkworth, part-time cook's assistant, promoted to part-time cook. Previous rate was $12.46, her new rate is $16 an hour, effective November 13th. April Brosnack.
Very close.
A part-time cook, a 6-month step increase. Previous rate was $16, the new rate is $16.28. That's effective December 12th. And Jessica Calhoun, a part-time cook, 6-month step increase. Her previous rate was $16, the new rate is $16.28.
Motion to approve all 9.
Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey,
Yes.
Tom Brover.
Yes.
Specifically, those sergeant and lieutenant promotions are part of that restructuring with Doug's retirement. We sure are gonna miss Doug. We're also excited for those opportunities for the correctional officers to have advancement opportunities within our correctional center. So we're looking forward to that and giving some more responsibilities to some of those leaders out there.
Good. Your replacement for Doug is that on the board yet?
Say again now?
Your replacement for Doug,
Yeah, so you guys approved that last week or the week before,
Yeah.
that's Coulter.
that's when I was going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good choice.
Yeah, he's gonna, he's been the assistant jail administrator, he was a sergeant years ago.
Yep.
He knows the operations out there, inside and out, he knows it well. I look forward to spending a little bit more more time out there as well. Between me and the chief deputy, we're going to establish a working office out there. When I stop in there, I'm in there about every morning, when I stop in there, you feel like you're a little bit more in the way, because you're sitting in their office, you're kind of catching up on things, but having a place to work, and I still do the budget for the correctional center, so it'll give me an opportunity to kind of be there a little bit, have a little bit more presence out there.
Okay, we have reports. We have the sheriff's monthly report of fees collected for November 2024, and the recorder's monthly report of fees collected for November 2024. These reports will be on file in the auditor's office and available for public review at your convenience. We have minutes for the regular meeting of December 3rd, 2024.
Move approved.
Second.
Sarah?
Jim Carrey,
Yeah.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Brover.
Yes. Any other business?
I have none.
I have none. Future agenda items. Committee reports.
My conservation board, we're just ramping up for budget season, nothing really reported there. Then I had a workforce development board, youth committee meeting, and they talked about support services for the youth committee. And for 2023, they did 518 support services that were active, and their support services are anybody that is receiving Title I career training services. They can buy boots, glasses, pay for independent care, financial help, mileage reimbursement, car repairs, stuff like that. Again, that's 518 support services for 2023, and they're not asking for any money or anything, so, they're doing it all within their budget. That's it.
I had a fair board meeting and college, the CSFA meeting this morning. And basically, everything's going real smooth out there. We've got a good thing going out at the college. We're that new room getting ready. They're gonna be able to accommodate 300 people on the safe room. And they're going to open it up maybe for conventions, if anybody's gonna have a convention or something like that. On the other hand, storage for starting in November 1 of 2025, it's gonna cost another $50 a month, or another $50 a season, which is 5 months to store your campers and that out there. Currently, it's $200, it's going up to $250. So that's $50 a month, that's gonna be undercover, so that's not bad. So that was on that meeting. Then I had a Southeast Iowa Crime Commission meeting, and things are going pretty smooth there. Crime Commission, they elected new board of directors. Needless to say, I tried to get out of it, but I'm still chairman of the board.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, you know your sympathy. But, so, everything's going real smooth on that. They're transporting. They're doing more transporting because they're reached out to some of the hospitals in the community, you know, the small hospitals around that. So the transporting is up, so it's going pretty good. We don't do too much transporting with them, so, but it's making us move. And then I had a juvenile detention center down there, and we had election officers, so guess what? I'm the chairman of that again this year. And,
Quality always comes through.
well, I don't know about that, but we're gonna have to put probably a new floor in the room down there, and we have, things coming pretty good down there. We've got, we're looking forward to working with the new sheriff down there because they're next door, you know, to each other. And, so they don't know how that's gonna work. They've had a good relationship with the one they got. We're hoping they have a good relationship with the new one coming. So, but the floor in there is starting to buckle up in some places, and it's a cement floor, but it's got, an overlay of, vinyl or something on it to start to buckle up, and if one of the kids is gonna fall down, so that's gonna get costly. That was the only 3 meetings I had this week.
I attended the Des Moines County Safety Committee. We reviewed the accident log for August through November, and during which time the county only experienced 1 lost time accident, so the rest of it looked pretty good. Okay, public input. If anybody from the public would like to address the board, has a question, you can email the Board of Supervisors at board@dmcounty.com. That's BOARD@dmcounty.com. Or you can call 319-753-8203 extension 4. That's 319-753-8203 extension 4. We'll give you 2 minutes to initiate that email or that call. The interim, does anybody in attendance have any comments, questions, complaints?
Of course I do. So,
Oh, boy.
December, so back to the EMS district, just a clarification. He'll be back next Tuesday, correct, with the defined district?
I think that's.
I think that's the first meeting in January.
That's the,
I
so.
think it's 3 weeks from.
Okay.
I don't know, I haven't looked at the schedule for.
For some reason, that date was in my head, but that could have been something else, so.
And
It'll be the 7th, I believe.
The seventh, okay.
I brought it because I was looking at it again to go through there, and I thought, it said, within 10 days, the board shall pass by resolution.
Right.
A motion has the same effect as a resolution. I thought, well, this would be a poor time to nitpick with the state. So we will get that done, and they wanted us to name the
engineer.
The engineer, and Mr. Mahaffey was gracious enough to call me back and give me a name and a cost.
Okay, alright, thanks.
I'll add, I heard DHHS, just to discuss the future, as they move from the regions to the districts and how that's gonna shape up, and as it pertains to law enforcement, and our goals really align, the consistency in services across the new to-be districts, better options, more options for that long-term inpatient care, which of course comes with a cost and needs to move to the legislative governor's office. And then reshaping the committal code, the 229 code, is also a big part of that, and how that works out. But it's all to be determined, but felt very confident that the services that we're very happy with, the justice involved services, CIT, those areas are going to remain, and we'll find consistency in that, and hopefully some improvement in areas. But I'm optimistic about it. I'm not sure that we were going into it, but very optimistic about it moving forward. And we're going to continue to have those meetings on a monthly basis. So it'll be nice to be involved on that level to keep that communication open and kind of reiterate where we're hopeful to see things.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheriff. Anybody else? Well, 2 minutes are up, so with an aye, we will adjourn. Aye. Aye. We're adjourned. We have a work session with the Iowa Public Information Board. We'll take maybe a 10-minute break. Mostly old men up here. So, but anybody that would like to stick around for that is more than welcome. Okay, we have a work session with the Iowa Public Information Board. If you'd introduce yourself for the record, take the floor.
My name is Erica Egley. I'm the Executive Director of the Iowa Public Information Board. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to provide this training. Again, like I said, if you have questions, just holler them out. You don't have to raise your hand. This isn't formal. Let's talk about things that you have, questions that you have. In this presentation, we have 3 different parts. Very quickly, I'm just going to give just a very brief overview of the Iowa Public Information Board, just so you know who we are. Then I'm going to talk about Chapter 21, the open meetings, and then we'll talk about Chapter 22, public records. We're going to go through all of the requirements under the law and some advisory opinions that have come out from the Public Information Board, some cases that have recently come out interpreting parts of that law, so that everybody's on the same page about what's required under Chapters 21 and 22. So first, I am not your attorney. You have a very fine attorney next to me. I'm going to talk broadly. If you have some questions about specific things, we'll talk about them, but I can't provide you legal advice. So if you need legal advice, make sure that you reach out to your specific attorney. The Public Information Board was created by the legislature in 2013. Our sole objective is to provide an official, efficient, and free legal resource for citizens and government officials. Our sole authority is under Chapters 21 and 22, open meetings and public records. We are there to answer questions, to provide advice, and to address complaints of any alleged violations of the law. We are one of the few agencies in the nation that is set up to have the authority and the ability to provide advice on open meetings and public records, state requirements. We have all of our authority in Chapter 23. Under that, we do have authority to issue advice about how public records and open meeting laws should be applied, to receive and investigate complaints alleging violations. We are tasked with working to seek resolution through an informal assistance, mediation, or settlement. This resolution that you passed at your earlier meeting and this training here is part of that informal resolution process. We think that a lot more gets done by working with groups to make sure that there's no future violations or any misunderstandings are cleared up, rather than looking for punitive measures. If we cannot resolve that complaint informally, we do have the ability, our board does have the ability, if there is probable cause to believe there's a violation, to move to a contested case proceeding. We do also have the ability to issue subpoenas to review confidential information, those types of things. The Public Information Board, any person can bring a complaint before the board, or they can choose to go to state court. The benefit of coming to the Public Information Board is it's faster, less expensive. We seek to find a resolution quicker than you can if you go to district court. If there's multiple parties who allege a violation and one goes to court and one comes to the IPIB, under the code, IPIB is to resolve the case before the district court takes action. And so they will stay any proceedings until that is resolved. Any final board order is subject to the district court judicial review. We specifically don't have any jurisdiction over judicial or legislative branches or the governor's office or any of her employees. Any other government body we do have jurisdiction over, all the way from drainage districts to the largest county government, state agencies, other than the governor's office. We are, however, limited to addressing Chapters 21 and 22, and any complaints that are filed with us have to be very recent and have occurred within the last 60 days. We do have the ability to issue advisory opinions and declaratory orders. If we do issue a declaratory order, it does have the force of law if it is enforced. Our board is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. Under code, we have 9 members. Currently, we have 8 members. We have members representing the government, representing the general public, and representing the media. We do have our board meetings every 3rd Thursday of the month, and we are now in the 21st century and live stream our meetings on YouTube. And that was a big step forward for us. So,
Where is Winkle?
Zwingle is up by, kind of around the Dubuque area, Makokata Caves area, that kind of. And Monica McHugh is our chairman. There are 3 of us. Some of us have better pictures than others. But we are all 3 attorneys now in our office. If you call our office, you can speak to any of us, email us. We receive questions on a daily basis through email, through phone. We'd rather talk to somebody before something happens, before a complaint is filed, talk through situations, provide information and our advice if there are any questions. And that's what we do on a daily basis. So any questions about IPIB or anything else you want to know? I've been there not quite 2 years now, so.
And I don't think this is off the subject, and not to do with this particular incident.
Sure.
But I was on the Mental Health and Disability Services Commission at the state for 2 terms. That's either 6 or 8 years, whatever it is. So the first meeting of every year, there would be a representative from the Attorney General's office, and they would come and talk to us about open meetings and things like that. And I would ask her the same question every year.
Okay.
I always got the same answer. I'm just saying it's
Oh,
changed. If you look at school board meetings, city council meetings, board of supervisors, sometimes if it's not on the agenda, they might let you stand up and say something and nobody responds. Other times they'll listen to you, but they won't respond, whatever, and they say, well, they can't because of open meetings. The representative from the Attorney General's office said that it wasn't our job to make the public's job harder. She said, if somebody comes and wants to talk to you, she said, you can talk to them. I said, listen to what they have. The problem is, ask questions, something like that, as long as you don't deliberate. She said they've made the effort to come. So is that still a function like that?
So, when you have a tentative agenda that has been posted and published, you can't add items to the agenda that you would deliberate or take action on. And so if somebody comes during you had a public comment period, if they came during the public comment period and they brought up an issue that was not on your agenda for your discussion, you could gather information. However, you have to be very careful that the board doesn't start talking about it and deliberating it. So I think that's why a lot of boards will say, we will take your information, but we cannot respond, because they don't wanna, it's very easy to slip into that deliberation. You ask a question, before you know it, it can appear that you're deliberating on something. So it would be better to take the information, maybe ask a question or two if you need some additional information, but if it's something that you wanna take up, put it on the next meeting's board agenda. Does that answer your question? I mean, so.
And I see what you mean, and I think, but we're usually pretty open if somebody called, they're complaining about the road, or they're unhappy about this, or if they say, this is my problem, who do I see, who do I talk to? And we've got the county engineer here, he might be able to handle their problem right now. And there's been times when it's something new to us, and we'll ask questions. I don't see, going, Shane had it the way I see it, or something like that, but
So, I mean, if somebody said, I have trouble with this road, you could say, our county engineer is right there, why don't you talk to him outside the meeting, right? There's nothing wrong with that, you're not taking any action.
What if the county engineer talks to him here?
Well, I mean,
during the meeting.
I would say it would be better to take it outside the meeting so that there isn't any, because the meeting is the actions of you guys, right?
Well, and a lot of times what really happens here, as sausage gets made or prepped, whatever, is somebody will come with an issue, it'll kind of get addressed, and many times you'll assign one of the 3 of you or somebody from out here to kind of sit down, meet with them, come together with a plan and come back. And I think that's okay, because the deliberation happens that next week or 2 weeks later after things have been looked into further and you come back. And that's really what, The three of you tend to do.
Yeah, and a lot of times, if we go back to the county engineer, he would explain what the policy is. And, you know, it said, well, your road gets gravel every other year, or whatever it might be, or, and goes through it. If it's anything that takes any time at all, we usually say, you can see the county engineer after the meeting or do something like that. But quite often, he can sort of direct somebody and say, that isn't our, we don't work on private roads. And just explain a policy to him. But yeah, I get, and I think we're pretty careful.
I think we are, well, like the city, they won't say anything. You know, somebody will come and say something, they might have a problem, and they'll say, you know, this is on the agenda, we can't do it, and they won't say anything. Which, you know, we can say, hey, sorry for your troubles, you know what I'm saying, you know, appreciate you sharing, we're gonna get back with you on this or something like that. That's not a problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that, yeah, under Iowa Code 21.7, you guys have the ability to control your meeting, how you wanna do the meeting. You know, I've been to a number of meetings, and all of them are done a little bit different. Every board is gonna have a different personality, a different way they like to run the meeting. The thing, you just have to make sure, like I saw on your agenda, the second thing was changes to tentative agenda. And I was really interested to see how that would be handled, because you can't add things to the agenda after it's been posted and published absent an emergency. I mean, if there's a safety or significant financial thing that can't wait for 24 hours, you can take it up, but that's pretty limited in what that would be. And so I was curious to see how you would handle that.
Usually it's taken away though
Right,
from
you can absolutely take something off, we're not ready for this, or, you know, we're not gonna touch this today, but you just can't add. You know, we've had complaints where, you know, there wasn't enough library board members for a quorum, so they decided they were just gonna add appointing people to the library board at the start of the meeting, right? You know, you can't do that kind of thing, because then the public doesn't have any notice that you're gonna take that up.
Right. We do that very seldom. We've done it twice, probably in the last month and a half, maybe, and that's as many times as we've done it in the 5 years previous. We had, the state told us we had to recount an election, and the board has to pass a resolution to do that, and the recount was gonna start the next day.
So, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
emergencies,
yeah.
but those should be very, very, very rare.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, I mean, you just have to be really careful that you're not talking a lot with them, you start diving into it, or taking an action, hey, we're gonna do something, you could.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I think we do that in the private life. It just, if people wanna come and they wanna say something or ask you a question, it just is, the public hates that.
Right.
You just sit there.
And don't say anything, and don't even acknowledge that, you know, hey, I appreciate what you had to say, and
that's, that's,
Yeah,
so.
so I mean, there's just, you know, different ways, and, you know, some are more, wanna be super careful that they're not addressing something the public doesn't know that they were gonna take up.
Thank you, sorry to,
No,
Doug.
that's, I would rather have, you know, this back and forth than, if we run out of time, you guys have the slides, forever, it's a public record, so. The first thing to keep in mind is when the legislature passed chapters 21 and 22, you know, it covers so many different kinds of government bodies. You know, again, drainage districts to the largest state agency, they can't cover everything. So if there is any ambiguity in the construction of how something should be done, if we're looking at something, we're going to, and we're uncertain, there's a gray area, we're gonna rule in favor of openness, of that transparency. So that's kind of how the legislature has told us we need to look at things, and that's how we try to look at things. The first thing to know for chapter 21 is if you apply, if it applies to you, and it applies to any government body. As a county board of supervisors, very easy, you know that it applies to you. You're created by statute by the legislature, so you are clearly a government body. The thing where it gets a little trickier is, you know, you have councils or commissions that are created either through statute. You had your Conservation Commission, you had your different areas like that. Those would also be a government body. If you are subject to if you are a government body, you're subject to chapter 21. I like to draw, and somebody asked me to put together, how can you figure out if you're a government body, if it's, so
If you could chart like that, you're
This-
part of a government body.
this is my chart. If you ever, the times it gets a little confusing is if you guys create an advisory board, or there's an advisory board and you're not sure who created it, if it was informal, formal, that's kind of going through this helps you determine that. So I leave you that, that's my gift. You guys can bring it up at the holiday table with your family. The best practices, if you're uncertain, again, in favor of transparency, if you have an ad hoc committee that's created, advisory board, task forces, even if they maybe don't meet that definition, having an open meeting, having work sessions with them, gives the public the ability to participate in that, to see the transparency, to know how decisions are made. We've had a complaint where there was an ad hoc committee created by a mayor to look at tenant laws, to landlord-tenant law ordinances in their city. It was unclear whether or not it was a government body subject to Chapter 21. But the public was upset because they came up with these ordinances and nobody had any input, nobody knew they were doing it. And so I think, if you wanna get buy-in from the people, just like you wanna acknowledge that they're there before you making a complaint, having a work session in the open, having that transparency, even if it isn't necessarily by the letter of the law required, is, as we say, the better way to handle those types of situations. So if you have a government body, then if you're going to have a meeting, you have other requirements under Chapter 21. So how do you know when you're creating a meeting? There's 4 things that you have. It would be a formal or informal gathering of members of government body in such numbers as to constitute a majority. As a 3-member board, you guys, if there's 2 of you, you have a majority of it, so you guys can create a meeting very easily. During that meeting, if there's deliberation or action about anything within your scope, anything that you would be voting on, budgets or, law enforcement, or any things that you guys would have authority about, if you're talking about those or taking action on those types of things, you would be creating a meeting. This is one of our advisory opinions. We had some government bodies that were uncertain if it mattered what you called a meeting. So if you called it a work session, or if you called it a happy hour Friday, or whatever it's called, if it meets that definition of a meeting, then you have to follow all the requirements, the notice requirements, the minutes requirement, all of those things for a meeting. It doesn't matter what it's called. This is a work session so that you guys can have this. If there's any deliberation or action, then you would need to make sure that your minutes reflected those kind of things.
So Ken just announced his retirement, or whatever. So say we have a retirement party, I don't know if we are, but say we have that, all 3 of them are there. But they're not talking.
So under 21, there's a specific exclusion for social events.
Okay.
And we do have, there was a bill that legislature was looking at about that. It didn't become law. So we issued an advisory opinion because there was a lot of confusion about that. If it's a social event, again, you're not gonna be talking about county business. You're not going to be, deliberating about, well, hey, we're at this retirement party, but let's, we were talking about that workforce development thing, let's talk a little bit about that. That would create a meeting, even though you're at a social event. So you need to be very careful that you're keeping it as a social event. Talk about,
Mrs. Brogan's
share-
flowers.
Yeah, flowers, share stories about, how, his career here or experiences you had with that. Just make sure that you're keeping it on a social basis.
I think the public understands that pretty well. A previous supervisor was a baseball fan, so I saw him in IV periodically. So if his team had lost, I would stop to make fun of him.
Well, you gotta, that's required.
People would walk by and say, having a meeting?
So, yeah, I mean, but it's, you know, we did have a complaint one time where there was a retirement party for somebody, and at that meeting, somebody made an announcement that at the next meeting, they were going to be proposing renaming something. So that starts getting to be a closer question, about, you know, is there deliberation or action? So, just, you know, keep your social. We also, I think it'll be later on here, you know, if it's something you guys all know you're attending, even just putting out a notice, hey, we're gonna be attending this social event. You guys have county events or various things like that. You don't have to, the law doesn't require it, but sometimes if people know you guys are going to that for a social event, that, you know, again, is that transparency and they feel a little bit more comfortable when they see all three of you there. So if you have a meeting, then you have to, under 21, provide public notice of at least 24 hours giving date, time, place, and the tentative agenda. We talked a little bit about tentative agenda. That doesn't mean it can change. You can add things at the beginning. Your agenda included all of those things. Notice of the meeting has to be sent to any news organization that requests it. There is no definition of news organization. So, you know, it's pretty easy. If it's a newspaper, for us at IPIB, if anybody requests getting that email, we just add them to it's just one button I have to push when I send out stuff. So that's, again, up to you, but there is no definition of news organization. That's a question I get a lot. When you post that public notice, it needs to be in a prominent place accessible to the public at the government office, or if there's no government office where the meeting will be held. So posting your meeting here in the courthouse would meet that. We also, you know, we believe that the public should have that full 24 hours to be able to view that. So posting it in a bulletin board at 5 o'clock for a meeting, the next day at 5 o'clock where the building is closed for a majority of that time, we don't feel is quite what the law intended. So we say that the best practices would be posting it on, you know, the inside of your glass windows or your door, so that if the building is closed, people can still see that. There's also publication requirements under different code section. Again, we're just chapter 21, so I'm not gonna talk about those. If you have questions about it, we can go into that later. So what it needs to be included in an agenda, you need to have enough information in there that the people in the community have an idea of what you're going to be talking about. You can't just put old stuff, new stuff, same old stuff, different day, different, you know. You need to have, and your agenda included, you know, you had reports, you had various things, you had your resolutions. So the idea is to make sure that the public looking at that would know what you guys are gonna discuss. So if it's something they're interested in, they can call in, they can watch your live stream, so that they can be participating in that. Again, I think we talked about the emergency items, covered that, but any questions on that, any concerns about that? The issues come up sometimes where there'll be like personnel reports, and there's a very controversial, you know, we've had cases where it's a personnel reports, and they knew before they got there that they were eliminating an entire department. You know, if it's something like that, you need to have some more information on your agenda so that the public knows.
Well,
Did you have a question?
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know, I'm puzzled on that. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We can come back to that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, in regards to that, they knew, the council knew they were eliminating an entire, I don't remember, I think it was 911 dispatch. And they knew before the meeting, and they just kept reports, and then they dealt with it in that. And there was nothing on the agenda for the public to know they were eliminating that entire dispatch. And we feel, you know, that if you know you're doing that, you need to put it on the agenda. You can't just hide it under reports.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
can't imagine.
if you were closing,
yeah.
you know, if you're
Yeah.
closing the jail or the prison or something, and you knew that ahead of time, you couldn't just have that under, you know, corrections to report. You would need to, you know, give the public some knowledge. Here's the social. again, deliberation, it can get very easy to get into deliberation if you start talking about that. But the purpose is to allow the citizens to see you guys come to that decision, to see how you make those decisions. If you have a retreat where you're doing strategic planning, those kind of things, that would also need to be done in an open meeting, because there's the three of you talking about the future of the county, you're talking about things you're gonna do.
I have a question about
Yeah.
that. Specifically about travel. So these guys they're ISAC, or right, it's ISAC, User Association. They have meetings outside of this area.
Sure.
It's pretty common to, let's all drive together.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
We don't do that.
They've never ridden together.
Say if you did though,
Uh-huh.
that's my question, not that you do,
Oh.
but say if it, cause it's plausible to.
If they
get
did,
to carpool.
it is plausible, they would need to avoid deliberation, if anything, it would.
Would they need to say?
Announce that?
Yeah,
Would
so
that have to be-
there was so I have a specific example of that.
Okay.
The city of Burlington received a statewide award recently, and they were going to travel away to receive this award, and it was kind of a mix of staff and council. And they didn't actually publish it, but they did in an open meeting say, hey, we're getting this award, a bunch of us are gonna travel together, and this is happening. And so, to me, that meets the definition. You've kind of made it, it was an informal thing, but it was very, in my opinion, because I cover that board every week, it was very much a calculated decision to put that information out there.
Right, so.
Would that meet the definition, or?
So again, it gets difficult, are they deliberating, or are they talking about the baseball team, are they talking about their family?
Or are they just covering themselves in case?
So, nothing in code requires you to put notice of a social event, right? We're just saying as best practices, let people know. So they're probably following, cause I say that everywhere.
Right.
Let people know you're gonna do this, just so they know, right? If they know,
We had a similar, like, at ISAC, we had a presentation by IPIB 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. And the discussion was, if you look at, here to say, a road tour.
Right.
Apparently there's lots of the counties that do that. And so we discussed it, and anyway, they said, we understand, they said, you can't very well take each member of the board individually to drive to a different part of the counties to look at a project or something like that. And they said it's not very handy to take the auditor along. Anyway, so, and just, he said, you can do that. He said, you're short on your arm. He said, you can't deliberate. He said it should be on the agenda if you're gonna have a work session, or if it's gonna be, we meet on Tuesday, so if it was gonna be Thursday afternoon, we would publish that we would put that on this agenda. But anyway, so we discussed that, and that's what they said, if it's not because it isn't that way.
so, I mean, you have to, we're balancing different things here, right? You got the efficiency of the government body. I mean, do you want 3 different cars going to Des Moines? Do you want 5 different cars, or I don't know how many are in that? Or do you want one cost to the county for that travel? And, you guys are, you've been here long enough. I would hope that your county would be able to trust that you guys know this is, we can't deliberate, we're outside of a meeting, we're gonna only talk about social type things.
Regularly, we take reporters with us. Anytime
That's
reporters-
what it says.
Assume that if you wanted to go
Yeah,
on the road
if
tour, and
Tracy
said,
said
hey, I
she
wanna
wanted to
go.
go
So
there.
if you're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to, if you're going out to a county to look at something, if you're putting it, if it's an agenda item, if it's a work session, it would be an open meeting, and the reporters would be invited to attend if they wanted. The public could go there if they wanted. It's that drive time, that you have to know that you guys need to
And see,
wait to deliberate.
Yeah, I would never ride up with Tom or Jim. They've got bad breath, first and foremost. But no, I wouldn't want, I'm just joking, but I wouldn't want I'd rather I'd rather even pay for it myself than ride up with Tom or Jim so that just the optics, you know, nobody can say, you guys were riding in that car for 3 hours, you had to talk about something, you know? No, I feel like that's, anyways, yeah, I don't get down like that, but we don't really spend much time together unless, again, it's a road tour, and Tracy's always available to, heck, we've had reporters come with us on road tours before, so that's never been an issue there, but anyway.
Was you a Cardinal fan? So we had, one of the reporters was a big baseball fan, this may long enough, I don't remember, so we had some great discussions.
It's one of the reasons we put it on, one for that public knowledge, and two, so that if a reporter wants to go along, particularly on the bigger ones like the project, the construction program and
5 year
stuff like that. So, but it's for public information, it's so they know, it's not just so they know to not think you're doing something illegal, it's so they know that you're taking interest in things that interest them, and roads are probably right there at number 1 or 1B, depending on the law enforcement topic at the time, of things the public want to know that you're paying attention to. So.
And that transparency and that buy-in.
Thank you.
All right, so here, if you have more, if you have some questions about that, we do have the advisory opinion where we talk about social or ministerial. Ministerial is a little bit harder to define. That can be, you know, it can be arranging a meeting, it can be, you know, just getting information without any deliberation, discussion, those types of things, but it can very easily turn into deliberation on those information gatherings. So I'm glad to hear that you're providing notice and inviting the media and the public along. But we do have that, you know, just think about, you know, if you start saying things like, you know, I think we should support this, or my opinion on this is this, or, you know, what do you think about this? Those types of things start to head down the line of deliberation. Email is another area where we get a lot of questions and things come up. So email is useful, it's very useful for government business. You know, for my board, I will send information to them directly, but I will always blind carbon copy the entire board so that if they have any response, it comes just to me, they don't talk amongst themselves. We have not yet had a situation where email created a meeting, but I could I think it's just a matter of time before that occurs. You guys all outside of this probably have been on, you know, I'm on a nonprofit theater board, and our president will send out, what do you guys think about this and this? And then there's everybody chimes in, and there starts to be that email deliberation where everybody's talking. You know, so you could create a meeting. A rolling meeting, those types of things. There's some question about whether or not, you know, you can have a meeting without it being, you know, temporal, you know, immediate. But I think my board, when it has come before them, I think they would be, you know, if there is discussions on that email outside of the meeting, I think they would be more likely to find that a meeting was created. And so, you know, use it, you can share information to each other. It's when you have that ongoing discussion. I know you get emails from your citizens, your constituents all the time, I'm sure, about their thoughts on things, you know, replying to them or passing on to the others is fine. It's just, you need to make sure that, again, that deliberation does not occur outside of a meeting.
I think we've been well before Tracy, this has been quite a number of years ago. The request, open records request by the Hawkeye for the City Council, the West Point City Council, and the Board of Supervisors. There was a discussion whether there was, what do you call it, a road or something like that, where if there's 5, these 2 talk, then the 2 more, and
Yep.
Anyway, we were actually, at that time, we were the only one that wasn't doing it. They wanted to see all the emails for a week or 2 weeks.
So, yeah, I mean,
or whatever.
emails are public, they're public records.
Ours had to go through a county attorney to make sure there wasn't any
Yes.
Information that should be released. I don't know, I don't remember what it was, but he
Right.
had to approve them before they went out.
Yep. So emails are public records. if you use your private email to conduct public business, that is also a public record. And so those also would, if a request was made for those, would fall in that. So just keep that in mind, but yeah, the Supreme Court in the Scholl case did find that you could kind of create a proxy situation or an agency situation where, you know, if Shane and Tom are talking, or well, Shane and Trent are talking, and then Trent goes to Tom and says, here's what Shane told me, what do you think, how do, you know, and then he goes to Jim and says, here's what I've heard from Shane and Tom. You can create a meeting that way. You're obviously trying to avoid having that conversation in open. The court has said that also can be a violation. So if you have, oh, go ahead.
Could you back that up just a second?
Sure.
And one of those things with emails and personal emails, personal phones, so this is something the County Attorneys Association's been trying to kind of get remedied, almost not legislatively, but through the court rules, where the courts are allowing for like defendant subpoenas, and they're just starting to allow that in a more broader light. And so fortunately none of the defense attorneys down here have done, but what some of the defense attorneys in like the Des Moines area and the bigger municipalities have tried to do is try to subpoena officers' private phones, private devices, try to track that into, well, you're talking to now your spouse, and so they're trying to subpoena spouses of officers, and just really using it as a way to harass law enforcement for moving forward and prosecuting cases. And so that's, when we talk about emails and personal devices, that's kind of why our office always encourages, I know we had this conversation with Kevin and them a couple of years ago, right? I've always wanted to try to you know, wall off the best you can. Hey, I've got a governmental cell phone or not, I've got a governmental email, and I've got a private email. I've got, and really separate those out, because bad actors can try to navigate their way through. And we've like dealt some with, what was that, the Cipher Hunter and things like that, where they're just, and that's a little different ball of wax there than what I'm talking about specifically here. But just know that my recommendation is always have your private email, have your governmental email, and keep them separate.
And don't even put the phones in the same pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but public records and subpoenas are two different things, but it's the same general idea. And we'll talk about that. Emails and private devices are something that is gonna come up a lot. So minutes, if you have a meeting, you have to have your agenda. Once you have your meeting, then you have to have minutes. The board needs to ensure that there are minutes of any meeting they have, and at a minimum, they have to include date, time, place of the meeting, what you had on your agenda, members present, and then any actions taken by the board. All votes must be recorded. You know, you guys took roll call votes for each of those. You know, in those minutes, they could say, you know, I think all the votes you guys took were unanimous. Could just say unanimous or 3-0. If it was a 2-1 vote, we would need to know who was on the 2 side, who was on the 1 side, just so the public, in looking at that, knows how everyone voted. Minutes, if somebody, if they haven't come back for the board for approval, they're still a public record once they're created. So if somebody asks for those informal minutes, that would be a public record. Advisory opinion, so we have had complaints where in minutes included information from public comment. People said derogatory things about other people, that gets people upset. As you're taking minutes, you know, I assume your auditor is not a court reporter, so she's not able to take word for word. So if you're trying to put a lot of information, a lot of what the deliberation is, you have to make choices, editorial choices. which can, also upset people if they feel there's a bias, or various things like that. So our recommendation, and again, every government body can do it how they choose to do it, but is to make sure that you have the actions of the board. You don't have to include what the public comment was. You don't have to include the specific deliberation among the board. If you choose to do that, you can. We're just saying, make sure that you're not creating problems from doing that. We have had quite a few people get upset when their name appear in the minutes, or they feel what they said wasn't stated as they would like it to be. So, just keep that in mind. The other question we get a lot is whether or not the public has a right to speak at a meeting. So, 21.7 gives you as the board the ability to control your meeting, to make enforceable, reasonable rules for the conduct of your meeting. You guys had a portion in your minutes of where public comment could be, so you allowed public comment during that. If you had a public, if you had something, like you had the EMS district, if you had to have a public hearing, you would allow public comment during that portion. I've been to meetings where they allow people to comment on everything they're talking about.
I was just gonna ask, if it's a subject that there's someone here that would like to add, it's a resolution or whatever it might say there, we allow them to talk.
That is your option. That is you choose to do that. Under 21.7, you have the ability to do that. The person, if you didn't allow, you can't just say you can do it, but you can't do it. You have to do it. You have to enforce it uniformly. But if you guys decided you can only talk during public comment, or if it's a specific public hearing, otherwise you need to sit and wait for the public comment period. That you would be within your right as long as that was uniformly enforced. The other thing that can come up is setting time limits. You could choose, we only have 30 minutes set aside for public comment. If you have 30 people that want to speak, everybody gets 1 minute, or everybody can only have 5 minutes. And, as long as you enforce that uniformly, you're not based on people's content or various things like that, you have that ability to decide how to run your meeting that way. I would say if you do allow people to speak, let them speak. I wouldn't question them or kind of go back and forth with them. Let them have their full time. And then if there's anything to take up from the board, if it's not on the agenda, to take it up at the next meeting. Closed sessions. So closed sessions are 21.5 in the code. The code it requires that there's only specific reasons you can go into closed session, and it can only be held if there is a vote in the open session. You can't move to closed session and then take a vote to go into closed session. You have to do it in open session, and it has to either be 2/3 of the members of the body or all members present. For you guys, that's pretty easy because you always have to have at least 2. You wouldn't have a meeting if you didn't have at least 2 of you here. So there. And you have to include on your agenda that you will have a potential closed session and the specific code provision and what that includes for why you're going into closed session. So we'll go over some of the more common ones. To review or discuss a record authorized by state or federal law to be kept confidential, or in order to retain federal funding. So a lot of times this can come up if you guys are looking at submitting a sealed bid or something like that. It wouldn't do you any good to talk in open session about what your sealed bid is gonna be, because it's no longer a sealed bid then. So, so you could do that. I'm guessing you guys don't have a lot of patent applications that you're working on, but if you did, you could go into closed session and talk about that. If you have to discuss strategy with counsel matters currently or may imminently be in litigation, the counsel does have to be participating because you are receiving attorney-client advice. So they either have to be in the room with you or on the phone. If it's your regular county attorney, that's fine. If you have like insurance provides an attorney for something and they haven't previously been identified as counsel, you would need to identify them. There is some question, I think we're probably gonna see some information from the courts about what exactly means currently or imminently in litigation. As we look at it, litigation is not just a district court lawsuit, it would be, you know, hearings, it would be an IPIB complaint. That's how we kind of look at it. I've seen it, interpreted a little bit more narrow in some, so eventually we're going to get that. The word imminently also, can sometimes lead to, concern. We've had, situations where there's, supervisors or council is looking at ordinances, about controversial things. Wind energy can be controversial, pipelines can be controversial. Those can result in lawsuits if one side or the other doesn't like what the ordinance is. So, you know, those, I would say, you know, we get calls, we're considering different, ordinances. This city or this county had this specific ordinance, they got sued, you know, and so we wanna talk about it. I would say that probably, if you're gonna consider passing that, you probably need some legal advice to understand that you could very likely get sued if you pass the same thing. So those kind of things to keep in mind. If you have you guys probably don't do licensing or disciplinary,
We've had, it's been a while, but we've had, disciplinary hearings with, I think we'd have the union officials and maybe an attorney. It's been a while, but I know we have in the past. Yeah.
so, you guys wouldn't have any students or expelling students, that would be school board. You guys wouldn't be handling a contested case. You could have specific law enforcement matters, which if disclosed would enable, violators to detect or facilitate, those types of things. I would assume that would be pretty rare. The one that has changed, and that the court is working through, there's a recent Court of Appeals opinion that came out, last week. To evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered, the closed session is necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to the reputation of that individual. In the past, if that person requested a closed session and the board chose to go into closed session for an interview, for an evaluation, for those types of things, they went into closed session. The Court of Appeals in this new case, and we're working our way through it, there'll be an advisory opinion hopefully by our board meeting on the 19th. The Court of Appeals stated that there needs to be a specific finding by the board that there could be needless and irreparable injury. You could go into closed session to do that inquiry. If there is no needless or irreparable injury, you would need to come back out into open session and continue that. Again, this was a Court of Appeals. This is kind of a change of how a lot of places have used this provision. So we're still trying to figure out exactly what that's gonna look like. Not sure if the Supreme Court is gonna take that up, but right now this is the way it would need to be. So if you're doing interviews, for instance.
Personnel.
Personnel.
Yeah, personnel, evaluations.
Right, so, the Tyke, Loeffler case was an interview for a city clerk. They went into closed session to do the interview. The court found that they didn't do any inquiry about whether or not there was needless or irreparable injury that would occur. We're not sure, I would assume, based on the interpretation, that would apply to any provision that you're utilizing this for. So you would need to be articulating whether or not there could be that needless or irreparable injury for any of that.
And I guess is if we're having we would have personnel hearings for, there's union negotiations, but then we would have a personnel evaluations for contract employees, of which we have several, and we would, always in the past, and they, typically they request a closed session, so we go in there, and then there's a back and forth, I think you're doing a great job, I think you're not doing such a great job. This could be, and part of that is the reason the person wants to be in closed session, but I don't know how you would, what's needless and irreparable injury?
If they're not doing a good job, I mean.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, personally, I would think, you know, if you're getting that constructive criticism, right? If that's in an open meeting, you guys are live streamed, you're probably on the internet, you know? If they were ever to go to another job, they would be like, well, you're not very good at record keeping, or you're not very good at communications with others.
That's what I would think could cause.
So, but,
yeah.
I think you have to make, as a board, you have to make a record in your closed session of finding that if you have this conversation, there could be that
Gotcha.
needless and irreparable injury.
So,
And you could only have that during that portion where there is that, that injury that could occur. I mean, nobody's gonna be injured from you saying, you're doing a great job, but we love you, we're giving you $100,000 raise.
Now, can we maybe come up with, so we have a separate private counsel that handles personnel matters, but say she puts together a group of questions, say 5 questions that she has for the board to ask, that the board can make a determination regardless of the candidate, regardless of the specific position. For these 5 questions, we think it may breach it's likely that it may, you know, lead to answers that may cause reasonable irreparable harm to the general person, the general public, and therefore, whenever we get to this portion of the interview, for any individual, we're going to assume, because part of the problem I have is, you know, now they're running the risk of getting into other problems. I mean, whose rights are we stepping on, right? So can we say, hey, we're gonna have these block of questions we can put together, we can let the media know, we can let the public know, and when we ask these 5 questions of our prospective employees, we're gonna take a closed session.
So I think, you know, you can read the case, but I think there has to be a finding by the board that says, okay, we're gonna ask these questions that, you know, likely it relates to, I don't know, what are your weaknesses? I'm just trying to think of something,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
When we ask these questions, we as a board believe that this could likely, provide information that would be needless and irreparable injury to the reputation of the person. We're going to close session to ask these questions, and then we'll be coming out of closed session. Because, I mean, the court does recognize you can't unring the bell, right?
Right.
You know, if you know, you ask me what my weaknesses are, and I tell you that I drink too much and I sleep
Right.
in, you know, I'm late for my job all the time. In open session, that's out there, right? You're not pulling it back in. I think there needs to be that specific inquiry by the board and a specific finding by the board that there could very likely be that needless and irreparable injury before going, you know, and that's why you need to go into that closed session.
Okay.
Doesn't that also give like an anticipation that you're only going to closed session though, because obviously there's something wrong with that person? You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's what I'm saying, if it's individualized, now
And
you're
then-
saying,
and then
oh,
like
they're
the
in closed
media-
session,
now
what's
the
going,
media- now
you
the
know,
media
whereas
says, oh, they're going to
opposed
closed
to.
session, to talk about Colin's, evaluation, so obviously there must be something wrong here.
we could do Sam and Jane's personnel evaluation in public.
But
Colin, we
doesn't-
need to
but
go in the
doesn't
other room.
But doesn't that person have the option to say, no, I want it in an open session? I got
So
nothing to
you can
hide."
only go into closed session if the individual requests a closed session.
Yeah.
And again, whether or not you go into closed session is always the board's choice, even if that person requests a closed session. So you could choose to always go into closed session, or always have open session.
You say that, but again, our counsel that handles employment law is gonna give us a different answer.
That's why I say that I am not your legal counsel. I get to think about just 21. They have to think about a lot of other things. But under 21, it is the board's decision whether they go into closed session. But they cannot make that decision unless the individual requests it. And, you know, the other thing that the court brought up was, you know, the candidate requested the closed session but didn't identify anything, because this wasn't the standard practice, didn't identify that they felt there might be needless or irreparable injury. So, you know, you could say, you know, we will be asking specific questions here that, have in the past brought up, you know, do you feel that there could be needless and irreparable injury? If you have to answer these candidly in open session, you know, do some kind of inquiry.
And quite honestly, it could be different, because if we're gonna take Colin in there, I know what I'm thinking, what I'm gonna say. I don't know what Shane might be thinking, or will ask him, or what Jim might be asking him. I'm thinking, yeah,
Yeah.
we're good to go, and Jim goes, well, so there sits Colin. Yeah.
So, again, this is a Court of Appeals, I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it's gonna go to further review, but this is kind of what the law says now, so,
Thank you.
we're all kind of working through it.
And we're just a week into it, right?
We're a week into it,
That's not right.
so maybe put off the evaluations for a little while.
Say what I've got to say about you is if you got your chainsaw sharp and then you're, that's a.
Irreparable damage.
That's
I
a
just-
run.
I've got it,
Very,
I've got
very
it.
interesting,
I agree with you.
you know, it's like, oh, well, you're going to closed session, obviously there must be some problem.
Or you could look at it as the government's giving you an opportunity to protect yourself.
I know.
They're looking out for you, not
I agree.
trying to nail you.
But
So, I mean, when I got the job, my interview was an open session, that was very, stressful. But then, you know, they went into closed session to deliberate between the different candidates. I would argue that if that deliberation, where they're talking about my strengths, my weaknesses, his weaknesses, if that's out for the public, that could cause irreparable injury. Next time I go, you know, if I'm not in this job forever and I go out to the next one.
Or you had to go find another one because you didn't get the job.
Right, yeah. So you know, it's things like that I think it's just the board or the court wants that discussion to have that finding.
So let me ask you
yeah.
this, so what happens, cause I know, we don't necessarily have that situation, but like cities do, they'll have like a head of HR. And what if that person is doing the performance evaluations and simply brings the recommendation to the public board and says, based on performance reviews, it'd be no different than a department head reviewing their
Well,
employees.
I mean, I would think that they would, if there's something that could cause irreparable injury, they probably wanna work with counsel before they present that in open session, but if it's just, you know, we've done the review, we've talked about strengths, weaknesses, we recommend the 3% raise or something like that, there's nothing in there that would cause, injury to that reputation.
Sure.
It would be, you know, if you're talking about, you know, you need to look at letting this person go or something like that, I think, you know, again, but then they'd also have to ask for that to go to closed session.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So if you're gonna purchase, real estate, you can do that in closed session again, kinda like the closed bid, it doesn't do any good to talk about your negotiation in open session. Cause then they can just listen and know what you're gonna offer. And that, the closed session, the minutes and the audio of that would stay, confidential until, that real estate transaction has completed, everything's been filed with the recorder, everything's done. If you need to do if you need to talk about security procedures, emergency preparedness, those types of things, of course, you can do a closed session, safety, health, those types of things. If you have a hospital, and they could talk about patient care, quality process improvement, those types of things could be confidential. If you go into closed session, while you're in there, you need to take, very detailed minutes, and you need to have an audio recording. The audio recording and the detailed minutes need to be kept separate, need to be kept confidential. You're going into closed session to keep things confidential, so those need to be confidential. And when you're in closed session, you can only talk about what you're specifically in closed session for. So if you go into closed session and talk about real estate, you can't then start talking about strategic plan, you know, your county growth and all these things. You need to just talk about that real estate. There was the DeWitt School Board, went to district court case, that was an evaluation, they went into closed session, and then they just started talking about a lot of controversial things that they couldn't talk about in open meeting. The court was not amused, don't be that person.
Don't be DeWitt. Gotcha.
Don't be DeWitt. So, again, you need to take those detailed minutes, take that audio recording. Those have to be taken, retained for at least 1 year. and they're not a public record. I don't know what your retention policy is. If you have different retention policies, follow that, but the code requires at least 1 year. If there's only 2 of you, and Jim was out on vacation and you had a closed session, Jim, if he chose to, could listen to that because he would have been able to be in there. But if otherwise, you should not be talking about what's in that closed session. You should not be disclosing anything. We get a lot of phone calls about, well, I had my evaluation in closed session and I know that they told other people what they said about me and various things like that. So keep it confidential. If you have any final action that is supposed to come out of that, so with your real estate, with the real estate, you've talked about the negotiation, you've got your specific price you're going to be offering. You would come out into open session, and then you would take action in open session. You would say, I entertain a motion to make an offer for this real estate as discussed in closed session, and then you would take that, you would take your vote there. You wouldn't necessarily have to disclose the confidential information, but you do have to take that action in open session. And the other thing to keep in mind, under Chapter 21, unless your attorney tells you otherwise, nothing in 21 requires you to hold a closed session. You never have to go into closed session. But listen to your attorney. All right, there was a new law that came into effect, it's not that new anymore, effective July 1, 2024, dealing with electronic meetings. This requires that every government body has to provide for their members, for their government body members, the ability to participate either virtually or through a hybrid or teleconference meeting. Previously, if you had a fully virtual meeting, you had to state in the minutes why you couldn't meet in person. You no longer have to do that. You can choose to have a virtual meeting if it makes sense for you. They provided definitions of these. I won't go in these, but hybrid is basically you got some remote, some in person. Teleconference, of course, using a phone. Virtual would be nobody's in person. So we did do an advisory opinion on this. The code requires that there be an ability for any of the 3 of you to participate through a teleconference or electronic means for every meeting, even if you don't request it. So that can be as simple as having a conference call line. Let's say Jim is in Des Moines for the ISAC meeting, snowstorm hits, can't make it back for the next meeting. He could still participate because you have a teleconference line he can call in, or you have a Zoom that allows him to participate. You just have to make sure that the people, if you're doing a hybrid meeting, all of the participants can hear what he has to say, but he would be able to participate like anyone else. But that needs to be set up and available for every meeting under 21.8 for that.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So let's say, I have it set up week to week that is an option, but 99% of the time, nobody connects to it. Do I have to start that no matter what if nobody's gonna connect to it? Or only start it if somebody's gonna need to use it? Does that make sense?
So you would just have to have it available for the government body. You don't have to provide that link to the public unless it's
Correct.
gonna be a fully virtual. So you wouldn't necessarily have to start it if everybody is here.
Okay.
It would just need
That
to
was
be
my question.
available.
All right, thank you.
But if I'm not here, start it.
Well, we've had, a thing before where Shane will call me. I had no idea he wasn't gonna be here, but Shane called me, hey, I need to get on there. So now I've started up.
Okay, so you guys already know all this, you're old hats, like, all right.
Does it have to be published that it's available, or can I just go to my board and say, hey, if anybody ever can't make a meeting, just let me know, I'll send you the Zoom next week?
It does not, so as long as the public has the ability to hear that person and they can participate, you don't have to have any additional information for the public. If you're gonna do a fully virtual meeting, you need to publish how the public is going to be able to hear that meeting or participate in that meeting. So for instance, our meetings, we do a kind of hybrid. We have a Google Meet link that if anyone needs to provide public comment or my board, they can jump onto that Google Meet. But for the general public, we have a live stream, I think similar to kind of what you have, so that people can just log on and see it. They don't have that actual Google Meet to participate. Exempt sessions, you mentioned, chapter 20, which would be union type things, those are outside of chapter 21. Exempt sessions are similar thing, but for non-union individuals. They would be outside chapter 21 if you're, meeting to discuss, insurance options for your employees, holidays, various employment type things, if you're involved in that. That is all of chapter 21. Any other questions about that? Public meeting, or public records will go faster. All right, thanks to you guys for sticking with me. All right, public records. So if you're a government body subject to chapter 21, you are subject to chapter 22, as well as all of the officials and employees of that government body. And a record is a very broad definition. This is straight from the code: documents, tape, or other information stored or preserved in any medium of or belonging to a government body. And this includes electronic communications such as emails, websites, or text messages. If you have records related to investment of public funds, those also are public records. Each body needs to designate a lawful custodian, publicly announce who holds that responsibility. Typically at a county, it's the auditor or the county attorney. I don't know how you guys have it set up, but the public needs to know who to request from. So emails. So we have had a number of situations where this first one is an individual was utilizing his public email to talk to his attorney and others about his divorce and child custody issues. Public records request was made for those emails, and so they asked us for an advisory opinion. A public record is a record of government business. It doesn't matter where it's located, you look at the record itself. So in looking at those private email communications, I feel sorry for the government body that had to try to sort through these, but the private email communications related to that individual's dissolution and child custody issues were not public records because they were not related to his government business. So they would not be released as public records. However, the government body still had to kind of sort through all those and figure out what was a public record and what was not. So keep them separate.
I still wanna go back to the cell phone.
Yep.
Because I use my own cell phone, and I got parishioner business, I've got all kinds of stuff on there, but I utilize that, and
So
I don't want anybody going through my flipping
Right.
cell phone.
So again, it's the record, not the location. So, I have an iPad phone and I do my email and everything here. But I also have Google where I can log into, I assume your email is similar, where you can log into an internet site. I don't know if you use Google, or I don't know what you guys use here, if you have internet access for those emails.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily, those are all stored in the server and they're not necessarily downloaded onto your phone, and the only place you can get it is your phone. Correct?
Yeah.
So for those emails, you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about those being on your phone. But if you're texting with
Oh, no, I'm not.
constituents,
Yeah,
that's
but I'm
not.
just saying, but I'm not, but I mean, if somebody tries to call me out and they say, well, then they've gotta go through my text on my personal phone, I don't know if I like that.
So we are recommending that the government body put together some kind of policy of how they're gonna deal with it. Because we continue to get, they see, you guys are great, right? I haven't seen it at all, but I've been to meetings where they're up there texting during the meeting.
Texting each other?
I don't know who they're texting. They're texting. Somebody makes a request for it.
Oh, no doubt.
Well, it's a perception. Back in the day before cell phones, I was a reporter, and I would sit at school board meetings, and they're actively passing notes to one another. So it's a public forum, and I could
Those
legally
notes
go
are
to
public
say,
record.
I wanna see what's on your note. They could be talking about, let's go get pizza when this is all over. Or so-and-so that's up there talking right now is a jackhole and they need to shut up, so you just don't know. It's the same with the text message. I'm sitting here with my phone and you're sitting there and you you have your phone out and you have your phone out,
Mine's in the other
and
room.
you may not be you may be texting your wife or whatever, but the perception is what rules. The perception is you are
I'm just saying,
exchanging
because
information.
this is also a computer, you know what I'm saying, for the meetings, we've got this top paper, but for me to get all the details to go through, I've got, you know what I'm saying, I've gotta go through my agenda, instead of dragging out my computer, I just hook this up and I can go right through and scroll through.
So-
But I mean, I don't like the thought of, yeah, somebody just being able to say, well, he's got his phone now, I wanna go through his phone.
So they wouldn't
No.
be able to just go through your phone, they could say, I'd like your public records for your text messages, with, Tom. So
They'd have
Shane
to
and
be
Tom, I wanna see
specific.
your text messages, and so then, you know, you have your custodian or your legal counsel who has to
Search through it.
search,
Right out.
you know, or others have, you know, they make them,
And
do
don't
it
get me wrong,
themselves
I
and
mean, people are
then.
doing stuff like that, and I get it, but, yeah, I'd like,
But, so if I made a request for what you were utilizing your phone for during the meeting, you would send me the agenda, right?
yeah.
And that I wouldn't, you know, that's what you're utilizing your phone for. It doesn't make everything on your phone all of a sudden a public record. That's similar to this. He was using his public email to do private business. His private business is not a public record, even though it's on his public email.
And aren't you saying that you're putting yourself in a position where you would have to be searched by someone to make that decision? It's not that it's necessarily gonna go to the public.
Right, but still,
it's gonna go to your county attorney who's gonna go through everything to
Right.
see what's.
Or they have to put together a process for how you're going to go through
Right.
this. We're recommending that there be some kind of policy in the government body about how you're going to deal with private texts, private email requests, and what that process will be. We don't have a recommendation on process, we're just gonna ask that you've gone through your process. And we wanna have certainty that, you know, if the request was made, there has been a review to see if there's records there.
So, are there any communities or organizations that have already done this and have something put together that your office has seen?
I know we had one complaint, and we weren't confident that they had actually done any kind of review, and so we asked them to put together a policy. So for that one, I'm familiar. I'm not sure if others, you know, I don't know if the County Attorneys Association has something, or other attorney organizations have anything, or ISAC, or League of Cities. I'm not sure if people have gone that far yet, but I could certainly look to see what the policy was if we have a copy of it from that one.
Have you guys always used your own cell phones, or did you guys have county phones at one time?
I've always used my own cell phone, it's got it separate.
I got my own cell phone. The only reason I got mine up here now is because, well, you heard my duck quack.
I heard
Too
your duck
bad.
quack.
I seen you laughing back there.
Gotta keep order, that's the timer.
I was like, well, that's an interesting way to send a public comment.
So do they have the option to use their cell phones, but I think this is probably what you're getting at with policy. They use their cell phones and say, I mean, because I've accessed every one of them for questions that I have, but Joe Schmo wants to ask them a question, so the policy maybe be you receive it, but you don't answer it back that way. You find
Well, I mean,
another
if
way
you're
to do
answering it, are you talking about text messages?
Yeah.
I would say it's
I think
better,
it's kinda
you
weird
know,
with text
use
messages.
emails. Text messages aren't saved as well, and it gets a little more complicated, cause you're probably texting a lot more personal than, you know, if you're using your personal cell phones, I don't know if those would be provided out to the public. You wouldn't necessarily have to be, I doubt, you probably have.
But they're very much so in the public, so they're not provided to the public, but
You're
how
out
many
on the
people
wall.
know all y'all's phone numbers? I mean, how many boards are you on? How many people in there, you get 2 parishes, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so their numbers, yes, they're not in the phone book to the extent phone books are made in 2024. But they're out there large, more so for the general public than the average person's got.
It's a two-way street. I have I have a county cell phone, and I'm like everybody else now, you live with your cell phone, I don't have two
We're not as
phones.
rich as the road department.
Well, but point is I have county business on county email, I have a personal email, a Gmail, like you described, on my phone. Very rarely do they overlap, every so often somebody gets the wrong email and sends it, but it does happen. I've sat through endless ISAC meetings where they'll get up and tell you that if you are that person, which I am, that there is a chance that somebody will be going through your phone and looking at your stuff to see if there is something, not that it's automatically public, but to see if it's pertinent to that public information record. And I'm comfortable with that. That is not a problem for me. I know that there's somebody that could scroll through my Gmail or look at my text messages, which are a mix of work and private, because that's the way texts are. And I'm good with that. I'm comfortable with that. I'd sign a policy saying that. You know, if you have other stuff you don't want the public to see, you should probably reevaluate how you're doing your personal business. But it's better than carrying two cell phones. in my
Well,
opinion.
but they also have like cell phones, you know, whether you have an Oracle ring or a smartwatch where it tells people what their heart rate is, or, I mean, we're talking like, it gets personal information. And I think most people would not because there's necessarily something like, oh my goodness, you know, and you're receiving information from other people.
Right, my
They're
deal is,
getting
it's not like it's
information.
confession, but people open up to me like I'm Barbara Walters sometimes.
Sure.
So I've got a lot of
Sure.
information that comes in, I do.
Yeah,
If
So-
you got two, you got county, let's say, you got your personal phone, you have your county email, which is your exchange. Then if you have your other email address on there, can they take both of your email, your personal email too?
So if you use your personal email, your private email to have any public business, that could be a public record. It doesn't matter if I send from my erica.eckley@gmail.com, if I send, you know, IPIP business out from that could be, I created a public record. Doesn't mean everything on my erica.eckley@gmail.com is a public record, but the specific ones related to public business could be public records if somebody requested it. I do have two separate cell phones, so that all the phone calls on this are IPIP related.
Yeah.
If there's any text, which I try not to use text because I don't think it's a good way to do business, but if there's any text, those again are IPIP texts. But that's, you know, a decision we made at IPIP to make sure that we kept it separate. You know, you guys, there's nothing in chapter 22 that says exactly how to do it. It doesn't say how to exactly respond to a records request or how you would go through your files for public. It doesn't have the same for private. So we're recommending that there be some kind of policy so people know how it's going to be done before that request comes in. So it could be that if we get a request for your private email, any public records related to, you know, this, I don't know, let's say you had a project you guys were working on, and they communicated with you on your private email. If they made a request for those communications between that business and you, how is it going to be done? Are you gonna send you're gonna give your phone or your computer access for that email to your attorney to review? Is the attorney gonna ask you to do that review yourself, pull any records related to that, sign an affidavit that you've done it, you've provided everything complete? How are you going to do it? So, and I'll find that one,
I mean, we kinda tried to get there and that landed you here today, so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's something to think about, because, you know, we did, you know, the Kirkwood Institute versus Sand, this is a Supreme Court case. Part of the issue was the individual used a private email address to communicate with the media, and a request was made for those emails. The court said, you know, this is a public record, it should have been provided. So, it's not just Erica that's saying that. And then we had a situation where there was an employee utilize their personal email to record a interaction between two government employees. And then a request was made for that recording. And so we found that that recording was a public record. And a request for it was made. The employee didn't wanna give it up. But it's the county's it was the county's responsibility to respond to that records request. So, you know, if there was anything that needed to be withheld as confidential, the attorney needed to do it. They could have had to pay for the cost of redaction, but it was a public record. So, using your personal phone doesn't make everything on your phone public, but, there will be, if you use it and you conduct business on it, there will be public information on it, so. So that is kind of, we get a lot of this is happening a lot, so that's why we're recommending having some policies in place. Again, if, have that policy in place, make sure you're including legal counsel on it. Make sure that you are addressing this issue. Our most recent public records request is, and it got cut off a little bit here, I apologize, but this is related to Facebook. I don't know if you guys have a county, you don't have a county Facebook, so you don't have to worry about it. But just like you can use your private email to conduct city business, if you're using your personal Facebook page to do city, county business, that could subject your personal Facebook.
Someone else's.
Well,
to that records request.
county business isn't me posting on my Facebook page that Highway 99 is open up, you know, as of Thursday at 3 o'clock. That's not business. Or is that, you know, are you considering
I mean,
that business?
you know,
Because that's, you know, it's just saying that a road's closed, you know, it's the same, it's public information, I'm just posting on my page.
So, but is that all you're like, are you only posting county business, or are you posting, you know, happy holidays from my family, or
No,
I went to
that's
the.
stuff too, but like if a road opens up, I'll post it on my page, because I've got a county page too, but most people just go to my personal page, so I'll say this road's open.
Facebook pages.
Well, I've got my county supervisor page, and I've got my Shane McCampbell page, but anyways.
So just try to be cognizant of what
Oh,
you're
no,
putting
I'm
on your
asking, be
personal.
cognizant, no, I'm
I
asking you
mean-
right now, Erica, should I
So-
not put that on my personal page and just put all that stuff?
I-
Because it's not saying, hey, I'm taking a poll here to see if people,
Yeah.
it's nothing like that, it's always
Right.
just, this road is open, this road's closed, here's some pictures.
So, I mean, this is kind of, we're struggling, we have a couple cases right now where we're struggling with when is it a public Facebook and when is it a private Facebook? So, you know, if I'm looking, like I opened a supervisor's Facebook and it was nothing but, you know, the county did this, or we did this, or here's this, or that. That was all that was on his Facebook page. And then I opened another one and it's pictures of him, it's pictures of his family, it's, you know, went to this trip. Those clearly are two different things. You know, the issue, you know, the specific post about if somebody made a request for that, if you have the post for the road is open on your official page, you know, that's easy to provide, right? It wouldn't necessarily be there. But if you start posting public business and then the issue comes up where they make requests for the block list. Somebody has found your personal page and they're just putting a lot of comments about your performance as a supervisor on that, and you block them.
What's a block list?
A block
But
list.
they can't post on your
Right.
page,
You can block people on Facebook.
it's locking them out,
Does
basically.
it matter that what he's talking about, just this instance, he's redistributing something I've already distributed publicly?
I
Like
would.
somebody else
yeah.
could share it also because it was a public.
Yeah, I mean, I think if
Notice.
it's like an occasional thing, but if it's all, your personal one is only just sending county business, county this, here,
No,
now,
not at all.
then
That's-
it's.
Actually, I don't have all that much posting on my page, but every once in a while, if it's, yeah, if somebody's been waiting, you know, when's this road gonna be open? When you're doing my golf course road, you know, and then, you know, no, that was information I thought would be disseminated faster from my personal page, and I did, but, you know, just your hesitation in answering that question.
Well, it's because again, this is the difficulty with it, where
I'm
you're
not appreciating
mixing.
Erica right now. I'm really not, you know, I'm really not appreciating
So I have an auditor's Facebook page, and then, so I'll like during election time, I'll put all the important dates and everything on there, but then I will share it from my page. So like, on my personal page, I'll share it from, so it's not like me publicly posting it on my personal page, but I shared what was wrote on the auditor's page.
Is that like sharing a link?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, you're sharing just the same information, like a picture of it. We need to get further guidance on this, because, I mean, if it's just,
Cause it's, I mean, everything that I would post as far as dates and stuff is all stuff that has already been published publicly. It's just reminding people, hey, don't forget tomorrow's the last day to register, or don't, you know, those kind of things.
but, I mean, you have to think about it, cause you're still mixing your personal and public.
Does anybody think it's ironic that we're in a meeting about public information and now we're trying to reel in letting the public know what's going on?
You're not really, you're not reeling it in. It's whether or not you have to provide it if they ask.
I don't have
That's
Facebook,
kinda
so I
also
don't
what
know.
led you here.
So, I mean, this is a complicated area. I would just say be really cognizant. If you wanna keep something personal, keep it personal. And use your public for public.
The other thing that, you know, from a tech perspective too, that I find interesting, like with the Facebook pages and stuff, is if for instance, I wanted to help set up a county Facebook page, you cannot do that without tying it to a personal account.
Right.
So Facebook
Correct.
will not allow you to do it unless you tie it to a personal account.
Really?
I know this is a public meeting, but I hate Facebook, so,
I think
Me
most
too.
people do, but everyone's still using it.
I'm sure I'm gonna
It's a pain in the
have
butt
somebody come
sometimes,
down
yeah.
on me for that, but, so, yeah, I mean, but is it tied to a employee in the county?
Yeah. So like,
So like-
so a great example is the public health department wanted to set up a Facebook page, but none of the girls over there, like Krista, for example, didn't have Facebook. So I had to tie it to my own personal account just to help set up the public health Facebook page. Guess who else are we gonna tie it to? So.
You get a
And like
letter
with
from the
mine.
Centers for Medicare Services. Register you.
But she really, you know, obviously she really wants to be able to,
Right.
because everyone's using it. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone uses social media, Facebook, so it's part of the beast, so.
So it sounds like we need to do another advisory opinion on use personal and when they kind of, I mean, it's something we have to decide now. We have a couple complaints where the question is whether or not it's personal or.
Rodney, what were you gonna say?
I just got a question, so like on Shane's instance, he's saying, I posted that on his personal page that the road's open, and somebody says, I want an open records thing of Shane's personal Facebook thing, so somebody would, basically the attorney would have to go through and say, well, this photo of his family is not an open records, this comment is not, the only thing that would be open records would be what he posted of the road and a picture, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And Facebook is complicated though, because, I mean, sometimes people, like your county government, right? I mean, if they follow you, they get all the posts, and so if they made the request, you could just send them to the Facebook, right? You wouldn't have to print off all of the posts and provide that,
Cause it's already public.
because it's already out there for them.
Yeah.
But if they didn't have access to Facebook, then, you know, you might have to print out the posts for them, or find a way to get them.
That there would cost a
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, best practices, don't use text or informal means. Put in place a policy about how to use it, how to obtain access. Have a retention policy, follow it. And then, as much as possible, keep your public and personal information separate. All right, so let's jump into 22, who has a right to examine the public records. Anyone can ask for, there's a lot less of people coming in and just asking to like look through public records, because most things are electronic now, and you're not gonna just hand the public your computer and say, you know, here, have at it. But are still in, you know, recorder's office or various things like that, there's still some public records that they could examine and go through. They're allowed to look through those without charge, as long as it's in the physical possession of the custodian. You can't prevent examination by contracting with a non-government entity to hold or store those records. So if you had physical records and you had a storage unit in Arizona, if you sent all your records down there and somebody made a request for them, you would have to make sure that those records were provided to that person. You couldn't say, well, they're in Arizona, we can't get them. Similar, if you have it up in the cloud, you can't say, oh, it's, you know, Microsoft or whoever has control of it, so we can't get you anything. The other thing to keep in mind is if somebody makes a public records request and it is provided to them as a public record, if then I walk in the next day and ask for that same record, you've released it as a public record, so I should receive the same thing that you gave them if it's the same request. It gets a little complicated when you have things for people who, you know, as parents of children, maybe want a copy of something as parent, but they make a records request. So this is a little bit more for the attorneys, but you would need to clarify that you're not providing it to them as a public record, maybe get a non-disclosure agreement, those kind of things, if it's things that need to be kept confidential. It doesn't matter why somebody wants a public record, it doesn't matter, they can do anything they want with it once they have a public record. They could make a request for all of your emails and then wallpaper their apartment with it. They could make it their Christmas letter for anyone, it doesn't matter. If it's a public record, it's public. They can do anything they want.
Can we charge them for that?
You can charge for the retrieval and the production of the records. You can't charge them for utilizing them however they see fit.
Well, I think we'd make some pretty good looking wallpaper, so yeah.
Well, I mean,
Right.
maybe you wanna get a public record patent in closed session, and then you can have the public record wallpaper.
Now you're talking.
You're on.
We're gonna make more off of this than we are on YouTube page.
You're thinking. All right. The other thing to keep in mind is that the person who makes a records request does not necessarily have to identify themselves. Iowa law allows for any person to provide it. The person can include an individual, a corporation, another government body, a trust, a state, an anonymous person. You can't require them to provide ID, you can't require that they be in state, you can't require that they be just a constituent. They can remain anonymous if they want. The only thing you have to have is enough information to communicate with them about their request, if there is a charge for the retrieval.
Who made up that rule? I don't like that.
Well, talk to your legislature.
They must rebuild themselves.
Talk to your legislature. So you just have to be able to do it. The other question we get.
I'm gonna take it, if I know it was gonna take this long,
Oh,
I
I'm
would've
so
drank that
sorry.
whole cup of coffee.
You wanna take a quick little break, or you
I
want me to
do.
go on without you?
Well, you can go on without me, but it's up to you.
We'll take a quick break. I'm
We'll
gonna
take,
refresh my
yeah, I'm
mind.
sorry for taking so long.
Oh, you're good.
No, we're doing fine out and learning a lot here.
Okay.
I think it's good. I know why Shane doesn't want his phone looked at. He's got about 15 girlfriends and he don't want to.
That's why he doesn't want it to look at.
Even in my best days, I couldn't even spell 15 girlfriends.
The problem with my phone is there's like 100 dog pictures on it. That's all I have are photos of my dogs. My poor husband, he gets like one a year, and the rest are dogs.
What kind of dogs do you have?
I have a Tibetan Mastiff, a English Lab, and a White Lorrainer.
Good. So big dogs.
Big dogs.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding security and that, especially when it comes to digital infrastructure. What are the rules on that in terms of public record and closed session?
So what do you mean by?
If I'm talking about the county's digital infrastructure.
Okay.
I feel it's pretty pertinent that some of this information could be used against the county, you know, as a hack, a breach, whatever the situation is. What's my?
So, I mean, that would come down to, you know, I would think it would come down to the security, you know, if you're talking about, you know, we need to implement a new and again, I'm not a tech person, so I
Well,
apologize for the
let's just say, for
language, but-
example, here's what we use for the county's network, here's the new system I'd like to go to, and here's the devices that I plan to utilize, and here's what device you currently use. Obviously, that's a pretty, that's like 2 steps in the door for any bad actor that wants to cause
Right.
either mischief or whatever on the county's network. So does that warrant,
I mean, I think, I think you could make an argument, with cybersecurity, you might have to redact things, but provide other parts of it.
The difference
If you're going, I think stuff that if you're
Yeah, do
asking
it hand.
for
Do it hand.
permission, for them to fund it or those
That's
kind of
not the
things,
only
maybe you don't
difference.
include specific information about,
Good point.
well, that's the other kind of issue too, is I try to be vague on a lot of that stuff. It can be hard sometimes when, what exactly is this cost, why is the cost? I'm trying to keep it vague and not too specific.
and it might be something that, you just redact if there's any way to redact, if you absolutely have to, if there's concern, you could say, I have concerns about discussing this, how we are setting this up. I think we need to go into closed session for security protocols and those types of things, then they would have to make that decision about that. But, I mean, you have to balance, if you guys got malware, if you got the ransomware, I mean, it would shut you down, right? You have to be able to continue, and it's a very real threat. So I think, I would work with your attorney.
And that was kind of part of my intentions, when this kind of all ran into a brick wall, is, I knew we were probably gonna talk a little bit about, how we're gonna retrieve the records and, the things that we have on the network in terms of our systems, on how we can retrieve that kind of stuff. And also some of the recent requests we've gotten for, employee personal information and that. So that's why I'm like, well, maybe it should be a closed session.
Yeah, so I think.
Which is what landed you here today.
Right, so, but I think you need to limit the closed session to just that confidential portion.
Okay.
Of, how are we going to retrieve this from our system, here's some technical things, we can't let this out in the public because we don't want people to have that gateway into our system.
So I'll give you a closed session on that, but just kind of the overall broad.
Just that very small.
But the overall broad, kind of discussion
How to respond
about
to records requests.
would have to be more.
Cause I listened to the discussion and it's been a little while since I did, but it was like about being able to charge or how much this was or how to respond or, it was broader than just that cybersecurity.
Cause I've noticed, a lot of different offices will get the same type of request and, it seems like they're kind of doing different things, that's why, and then obviously setting some kind of legal custodian, I thought would be a good thing as well, so that was kind of my overall.
Yeah, and a lot of that could be an open session, right? A lot of that isn't related to that concern of security.
Sure.
So that's the difference, is talking about that security protocol, those types of things could be in closed session. But that broad discussion of how to have custodians, how we're going to handle this countywide, what our policies are gonna be, that should be an open session. All right, the other question we get a lot, people, in the code, there does allow for a good faith delay to allow whether a record is public or confidential, between 10 and 20 calendar days. A lot of people believe that 20 calendar days is the amount of time you have to respond to a records request. The Iowa Supreme Court has not agreed with that. The Iowa Supreme Court originally had the Horsfield Materials case, in which they did not want to impose an absolute deadline, because there's so much difference in the types of records requests you get. You might get something for a copy of your minutes, you might get something for 9 months of your emails. There's a big difference between those and the amount of time and effort that goes into those. Since the Horsfield Materials, the Supreme Court had the Bellin case, they've had the Kirkwood Institute, and they've had the Tye case, and they've specifically talked about specific fact questions about unreasonable delay. And it all relates to, are you communicating? Are you making good faith efforts? Are you just like getting this and letting it sit and doing nothing with it? There's a difference between those. Recognizing that some records requests don't take a lot of time, some records requests are quite lengthy and can take quite a bit of time. They don't want to put an absolute deadline on it. I would say, you know, a lot of complaints that we get are when there's a significant delay and there's not a lot of communication. You know, if they make a request for a lot of, let's say, I'm trying to think, one of them was like, they wanted a keyword soccer or something like that from emails. That brought up like 5,000 email records, so that takes a little bit of time to go through. You're not gonna likely get that done in 20 days. So, you know, you have to take into account those different things. We did an advisory opinion to try to help put a little flesh into what this reasonable delay inquiry would be. Basically, best practices would be to promptly acknowledge that you got the records request. That's the other thing we'll get complaints that nobody ever responded. I always say, have you followed up? Because I've seen a lot of things end up in spam, especially if they send them to a lot of different people. It can end up in spam if they have a lot of attachments and links. It can end up in spam.
And I know one of the things that was talked about, and I don't know if anything, and I don't wanna make this go too long, but one of the things that was talked about and was asked of the IPIP board was if they could come up with a kind of a gateway for questions to go through for inquiries, so they can go to like the IPIP, ask a question, have it filtered out, and then disseminate it to the governmental body. So that way we know the questions coming through. And that came up specifically as a result of Cyber Hunter, remember that? Or Cypher Hunter, yeah. Did anything come of that, or is that something that's just?
You mean as far as like the records requests?
Yeah.
So we don't have funding for that. I know that there was a discussion, like and I'm gonna forget the name of it, there was like a collaboration between the cities, the counties, and school boards for some kind of portal that they could do.
Yeah.
I have not heard anything from that. That's not something IPIP has any kind of funding to do. We haven't had change in pay for 10 years, but if you guys wanna talk to the legislature, we'd be more than happy to work on it.
Okay.
They don't listen to us.
So, but I know there was a discussion. I don't know, I can't remember the name.
Because that was some of the concerns, is we were getting these things, and we get these emails, and they have links to them, they have attachments, they have all of these things that Colin tells us. I mean, even this morning I got an email from him, don't touch these, what was it, burlington.org emails? Don't touch the red button emails that we get told, and we get these information requests that are full of links and attachments that are supposed to blow up if we touch them.
So, yes, so we did put out an advisory opinion about requests like that. So with a records request, they are allowed under code to make a request in person, by telephone, in writing, or by electronic means. As long as they have the ability to make a request any of those 4 ways, however they choose to do it. Our advisory opinion says you can make restrictions on electronic records requests. So you can, for instance, if you get what appears to be a records request with all kinds of links and attachments, you do not have to click the links or the attachments. You can respond back. I would say put together a policy or procedure, however you're gonna do it. You can respond back and say, if this is a records request, I need the specific records requested in the body of the email. If they are not able to do that, or if they don't want to comply, I would say give them another chance. Say, I need this in the body of email, I cannot click. If you cannot do that, you are welcome to mail this request to me. You do not have to put your county security, your network in jeopardy to respond to a records request. I don't know how many, I've done multiple cybersecurity, I'm sure all of you have. They always say, don't click the link, don't download the attachments if you don't know it's coming, right? By most of these records requests you're getting, you don't know they're coming, you might not know who that person is. You should not be putting your county at risk by clicking links and attachments. There is no reason a records request needs an attachment or a link. It should be clearly stated in the body of the email. You can look at our advisory opinion. If you wanna use online forms, if you wanna use, portals, those types of things, all of that advisory opinion gives you the authority to do that, as long as you give people the ability to make those requests in the other 3 ways. You can put those restrictions on electronic records requests.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Does that help?
Yes, yes.
And if you wanna work with that collaborative, if they wanna create a statewide portal that everybody, all of them can filter through, that would be super great. I don't know what that would cost.
They're not cheap. I've looked at them.
Okay.
But I do know that there are.
From the county's perspective or the state's perspective?
Yeah.
I do know that there are some that, government bodies that have portals that, people, that they send them through, it has to filter through. There's no reason you can't do that, in our interpretation of the law. So, you can also, we also have best practices for people making the requests, so if you wanna just copy and paste that, for responding to some of those, you can as well. You are allowed to charge reasonable fees for the services of the custodian to retrieve and to make copies. The Supreme Court upheld that in the Tide case. However, those fees have to be based on actual costs that are directly attributable to the retrieval, examination, and copy of the records. So if you have a clerk who's pulling all these records, that clerk makes $25 an hour, you could charge $25 an hour for his or her time. And so it would have to be based on that. You can also make fulfillment of a request based on a prepayment of a fee. So you would provide a reasonable estimate. You've asked for 3 months of emails between Shane, Tom, and Jim. We've done a little investigation. We anticipate there's about 5,000 emails because they like to talk a lot.
Right.
And, we anticipate it will take 10 hours of her time at $25 an hour, 1 hour of IT time. You guys make like $1 million an hour, right?
Most people think so, but yeah.
And, and so you can make that, and ask for them to pay that fee ahead of time. Then once you do it, you do need to keep track of how much time it actually took, and if it actually takes less time and costs less, you need to provide them a refund after that. But you do have to provide that estimate. If it's something that's going to be quite costly, I would recommend saying, here's our estimate, this is how we break it down. They always want to know the breakdown, so provide the breakdown. If you would like to work with us, we might be able to, if you want to reduce this request, or if there's something specific you're looking for, maybe we can reduce the cost of this, help you get a little bit more narrowed in what you're looking for. They don't have to tell you, they don't have to work with you, but if they don't want to, then you can request that prepayment.
So if I get a specific request, because this has happened before, where I want all correspondence that is with these individuals, and they list off like 10 different individuals. I really have no idea how many emails, that would be, or what time that would take to go through, or whatever, until I basically do the work to find out. And I've had to do that before, and then came back and said, here's, basically the estimate of what it would cost to, deal with these and go through them. And then they said, not interested, and here's some more stuff I want you to dig through. And that kind of just wasting my time, so to speak, on that kind of stuff. Does IPIB ever make any,
So, we do not have
resolutions on
anything that allows you to not respond to a records request.
So can I just say, here's what I would generally speaking cost-wise on those type of things, or?
They need to put they need to put it on layaway. They need to put something down on it.
I mean, there's just, a lot of those type of requests, there's just nothing I can do without putting the work in and finding out exactly how much information is there. And I feel like the individual that was making those requests knew that and was doing it just to be, I'll be kind in an open meeting, so.
So, yeah, I mean, again, this is the balancing of, we wanna make sure things are transparent,
Yes.
people can get it, versus, there's some people that utilize that a lot.
Well, and I think that the reality is, and and everybody knows, 90% of the requests, if not 95, come from private individuals wanting something to do with themselves. And those are responded to in kind. The other 5% come from the media, and we love working with the media, and always have and always will, and we can respond easily. But when there's just this 1% that comes through from bad actors, and it really does spoil the cost attributed to that is very difficult.
Right, so, how long, like, if you were to do, just one search, like, do you have like
It would depend on the search, honestly, on what exactly, if they're looking for keywords, certain people, yeah, I don't know, it just really depends on what, what they're looking for, so. I mean, it was just like, hey, I need the last month's worth of this individual, I could do that pretty, fairly quick. But hey, here's a list of, email addresses, I need you to start searching through, and any correspondence from anybody within your county, from the dawn of time, I want all of those. Well, that's gonna definitely take me some time to do some digging to even get any kind of estimate on what that would, be. Even just getting the amount of records that I would need to search through, I'm still gonna have to do a decent amount of searching for that.
Can they ask for, like, start asking questions and get that requester to maybe narrow that search?
They-
Is that
they-
permissible?
They can absolutely ask, the person doesn't
They
have
have to, right.
doesn't have to respond. I'm just wondering if there's some way to, because you're providing a reasonable estimate based on your experience, ultimately, the amount that they would pay for, once they receive the records, would have to be based on the actual costs. But in providing a reasonable estimate, I'm just wondering if there's some way that you can have, based on your experience, if they're looking for a certain number of months or this many emails, it typically takes 2 hours of my time. Since you're providing an estimate, and you could base it on your previous experience, instead of spending 5 hours doing something, knowing that they're likely not gonna pay
And that
ultimately.
was the problem, is it was very likely they're not gonna pay it anyways, but they just know that they're wasting my time, cause I have to do a considerable amount of work just to find and gather up that information, just to give an estimate. And that person knew that, and so, but, I'd still do it anyways, but it's still a
Right.
big waste of.
So I'm just
hours.
wondering, from your experience with that, is there a way that you can kind of put up a quick, I know that it's not gonna be, typically if they ask for 5 email addresses, it's gonna cost, for 2 months, it takes an hour or 2 hours, kind of put some baseline estimates. And then if you actually run the search, and then you'd have to have the attorney go through the confidential, you have to have somebody do the initial review to pull out the confidential. I don't know if there's any way to.
I could guess, but,
We can
Do
put
it
something
sort of-
together in a policy that says, hey, if we have a voluminous request, we're gonna need, say, an initial $500 to establish what we think the ultimate end cost would be, and look and do that. Because when we've had those voluminous requests, every time it costs more than 500, I mean, sometimes
It's-
several thousand.
yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah,
records.
yeah. So maybe we can come up with a number like that
Yeah.
as we put together our policy.
And as you're again, you're providing a reasonable estimate, be able to kind of show how you got to that based on that. But then you would need to keep track of the actual time spent and the actual costs. And if there was anything that they prepaid at the end, if it wasn't quite that much,
And
they
it
would have to
wasn't-
refund it.
And with this individual, it wasn't just us, there was many other counties dealing with the same thing at the same time, so.
Legal review, so you could charge for legal only after there's been an initial culling, for potentially confidential information. So, for instance, you pull out 5,000 emails, you could choose to give all 5,000 emails to your attorney to go through, but you can't charge for the time for them to go through all 5,000. What you would need to do is have somebody do an initial review, of those 5,000, there's 300 that potentially could put you confidential, hand those 300 to the attorney, and then you can actually charge for the actual time the attorney spent looking at potentially confidential information. Redaction, so if you can redact something, and still provide it, you need to do that. If there's no way to redact it, without identifying people or the confidential information, you can withhold it. Confidential records, we're not gonna go, you'll be happy, and we're not gonna go through all 75 confidential exceptions. We're just gonna go through some of the most common. So 22.7, the legislature has identified things that can be withheld. They're public records, but they can be withheld as confidential. Some simple ones, medical records, if you guys were a hospital, trade secrets protected by law. So if you have RFPs and bidding, if they identify things as trade secrets, those could be withheld. They could seek an injunction to have that withheld. Work product of an attorney, it has to be related to litigation by or against a government body. But there is also, it's not in 22.7, but there is also attorney-client privilege. So the Supreme Court and the Iowa IPIB is not gonna ask you to release your attorney-client privilege communications as a public record, unless you wanna waive it. Police officers' investigative reports, with the exception of date, time, specific location, immediate facts and circumstances surrounding a crime. We're gonna talk a little bit about the balancing test that's required before something is withheld there. Crisis intervention report generated by law enforcement agencies. We just did a advisory opinion on that because the law or that provision specifically states it has to be on a certain form, and nobody was aware of where that form is. If you guys, it's on the TRACS system. So if you have not been able to find the crisis intervention report, that's where it is. But if you have anything that was not on that form, we do have an advisory opinion about keeping that confidential, because a lot of times you're dealing with issues like suicides and things like that should not be a public record, likely should not be a public record. Appraisal information.
And that includes the videos, right?
Yes.
Which is, yeah, that's touchy right now.
Information that's released caused the loss of federal funding, so FERPA, schools, those kind of things. Information regarding Homeland Security. Confidential personnel records, certain things are automatically confidential: age, race, sex, address. The things that are specifically public are mentioned in the code. Employee's name, their compensation, which includes anything of value, retirement benefits, those types of things, employment dates and positions held, education background, previous employment. So basically their application or their resume, and whether the individual resigned in lieu of termination, was discharged, or was demoted, or as a result of disciplinary action, and the documented reasons and rationale. There is an advisory opinion that says that, there is also a requirement that if you have an individual, an employee who has, discharge, disciplinary action, or potential resignation in lieu of termination, you do need to provide them with notice that that information could be public. If you don't want to redact and release documents about information, the reasons and rationales for those things, you could work with them to come up with a statement. Typically, you don't have to create a record that doesn't exist, but if you want something that you can provide, if something, again, right now we have a complaint where we're arguing over whether or not reasons and rationales were sufficiently disclosed when a request was made about a resignation or a termination. So that's something to keep in mind, but again, there is the requirement that you provide notice to that personnel about that. And I'm sure your employment attorney knows all about that. 22.718 is persons outside of government, so you guys are getting emails from your constituents, they wanna report something, or they wanna tell you something. If somebody made a records request for that, you could potentially withhold it if the lawful custodian could reasonably determine that people would be dissuaded from reporting if that kind of information was made public. But it has to be somebody outside of the government, and it has to be something that they were not required to provide to you. Job applications, previously, all job applications could be withheld as confidential in 22.718. But in the recent Teague versus Chavez case, the court said that if it is an internal candidate, their job application is not confidential because they are not outside government. Draft records, this is not just your rough drafts, this is basically you guys are looking into something before it comes before the government body to consider, to look at. So, you know, Shane, maybe you get an idea that you wanna put a playground on every city block, so you start doing some research, pulling all kinds of stuff. You're looking at it, you're like, you know, I'm not sure this is a good idea. That could remain confidential as draft, because it never came before the board to look at.
But how would you know that? I mean, unless you went through my records, how would you know those facts?
Well, if it came up in a keyword or came up things like that. But if you provided it to the board for their consideration, then all of those documents would no longer be confidential.
So if we've got a road project and they're talking about a bypass through, I don't know, that's what, Beaverdale, right? That's a neighborhood. A bypass through Beaverdale or something. And, or no.
Okay, to another meeting, sorry.
But anyways,
Pleasant Grove.
Pleasant Grove, thank you. And that comes before the board, and we're like, no, we don't wanna bypass Pleasant Grove, we wanna go through. And we mark that up, and then we have another draft come back from the engineers or the architects, you know, a month later. Those draft records are, even though they're drafts, those were presented? Are you talking individual drafts, or, oh, okay, there we go.
So here's your, again, for your holiday dinner table, your flow chart of when it could be withheld as a draft document. This is
colorful.
It's
That's
not,
why
this was my
I'm a
first
little
one.
disappointed.
This was my first one. I got a little more sophisticated.
You're better than that, Erica. You're better than that.
This has already been approved by my board, I'm not changing it. So, you know, the key is, has it been provided, did the board ask you to do it? Has it been provided to the board? Those kind of things, look at it. Investigative reports, so you always have to release date, time, specific location, immediate facts and circumstances surrounding a crime or incident. There's other things, email and telephone billing are confidential until either the statute of limitations run or there has been a trial on it. Peace officers' investigative reports is probably the most broad, undefined thing within this entire code. We have found that it includes 911 calls, it can include dash cam video, anything related to that investigative report. It is not automatically confidential. There is a balancing test that the court likes to put in place. And this was in the, this is the Hawkeye test. It's a little strangely worded because it's based on another provision of code. But basically a public officer is being examined. It doesn't have to be in court, but like their report or they were involved in it. The communication to the officer was made in official confidence. The only time I've seen that wasn't applied was when it was related to accident reports, because you know that those are gonna be disclosed to the other party. And the public interest would suffer by disclosure. So, you know, if you have a case that is currently open, you know, you haven't gone to trial, you haven't caught the person, those types of things, that would balance in favor of keeping it confidential, because you could have suspects, named suspects who aren't necessarily the people who did it. You could have rumors, innuendo. The person who hasn't been caught yet could get information that they shouldn't have and you know, avoid detection. The times where the courts have found that the public interest would suffer, or where they have required release, are things that are related to, you know, officer-involved shootings, concerns of, you know, improper actions, excessive force, those kind of things. So the balancing test needs to be made. There is a protection if a balancing test is made but the court disagrees, where there is some protection. So the balancing test does need to be made anytime you're gonna withhold as confidential. So if it's an open case, you know, that just, you know, explain that public interest would suffer because it's still open, these various things, those types of things. The other thing to keep in mind, like the closed session, the public records law allows release of confidential information when ordered by a court, by the lawful custodian of the records, or by another person duly authorized to release such information. So So just because something can be withheld as confidential doesn't necessarily mean it has to be withheld as confidential. But again, if you release it as a public record to one person, you release it to anyone who asks for it. Settlements, if there is a settlement with a government body, you do have to provide that and make that public. The summary and the settlement agreement are public records. I would say that the code requires that that settlement be complete, so if there's a waiting period before somebody could revoke it, I don't think you have to wait until it actually becomes complete and goes into effect. Penalties, there are civil penalties. Court can issue penalties against the government body for violation of chapter 21 or 22. It could be 100 to 500 if there's not necessarily you just made a mistake, you didn't rely on anything, or if you knowingly did it, it could be 1,000 to 2,500. I know the legislature was looking at vastly increasing those last year. That didn't pass. So this is something that they do take very seriously. Best practices, I'm not gonna go through these, I'll go through these very quickly. Promptly acknowledge the request, provide contact information for the custodian or designee, provide an approximate date, when you would be able to provide an estimate, provide a date, approximate date of when you think you can provide the records. If there's any expected delay, communicate with them. We had a large request. I provided an estimate of when I thought I could get it to them. It ended up being a bigger project than we thought, so I just said, hey, this is taking longer than we thought, we'll have it here. We rarely get complaints when people are communicating about the process. If you have lengthy text attachments, links, or other things in an email request, request they resubmit specific records requests in the body of the email. If they push back, restate that the information needs to be submitted. If they still won't do it, remind them that they have the option to mail the request. Clearly articulate those limitations, but make sure you do it uniformly. If you have extensive email records requested, work with your IT and cybersecurity people for that. If no record exists, clearly articulate there's no record. Technically, there's no requirement to do that under the code, but it does help people know that there's no record. You don't have to create something that doesn't exist. If something's being held as a confidential document, articulate that you're withholding confidential documents. Again, the code doesn't necessarily require that, but it does help them to know. If something is going to take less than 30 minutes to provide, the legislature asks you to consider providing that at no charge. If it's an extensive request, provide that reasonable good faith estimate of the official costs. If it's too high, try to work with them to narrow the request or reduce the time. If you have any questions, we're all available. And sorry I took so much of your time today.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Where'd you come from, Erica?
Well, I live just south of Des Moines, so I got up at 6 this morning to get here on time. So.
Oh, all right, well, make sure you gas up in Des Moines County before you get on the road.
Gotta pay for those new roads.
Bless your heart, we appreciate you. That was a good presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.